This is a placeholder. Attempt to fetch the chapter from htrvlab.com/eng novel/10199, the beginning of the game, The Black Abyss and White Flowers, chapter 321. Failed with the following error. Fetch of URL hwtr.com/areader/get failed due to network error 521. This is a placeholder. An attempt to fetch the chapter from httr-lab.com/a-novel, na112-199, Douluo-Dalu, the beginning of the game, The Black Abyss and White Flowers failed with the following error. Fetch of URL httr.com/ap to reader get failed due to a network error 521. This is a placeholder. Attempt to fetch the chapter from http://lab.com/novels1e9/Dalu, the beginning of the game, The Black Abyss and White Flowers, chapter 323, failed with the following error. Fetch of httr/readers get failed due to a network error 521. This is a placeholder. The attempt to fetch the chapter from atr.com/lab.com/novel1199/Douluo-Dalu, the beginning of the game, The Black Abyss and White Flowers, chapter 24, failed with the following error. Fetch of atr.com/8readers/get failed due to a network error 521. Chapter 325, Strategic Advantages. Sect Leader Nan, please lead your people through as quickly as possible. Zhang Lexuan stepped forward, pointing toward the towering spatial gate that shimmered with a blue, wave-like light. Her voice was steady. This place is dangerous, and the situation is deteriorating. No one can predict what will happen next. Transferring to a safe zone as fast as we can is the best option. The spatial gate looked like a divine miracle. Black Tower's handiwork, powered in part by the authority of the Thousand Realms One cycle. Any location whose precise spatial coordinates had been recorded by the Thousand Realms One cycle could be reached instantly through this conduit, regardless of distance. Maintaining a passage of this scale required enormous energy, but Sea Abyss City's efficient Honkai reactors could shoulder the burden. Before the Delong sect arrived, Zhang Lexuan had already organized and evacuated a great number of civilians from the stronghold. Only a few remained now, mostly the strongest who had chosen to stay behind, guarding the final operation of the gate and ready to intercept any Antimatter Legion Void soldiers who came near. With the Snow Emperor and the Ice Emperor, two ultimate ice controllers, stationed at the core, the stronghold was still relatively secure, for the moment. Everyone understood that security could vanish in an instant. The calm now existed only because the Antimatter Legion's attention had been drawn to fiercer battles at the Imperial Palace ruins and the Deep Pit battlefield. If the main front shifted, or if the terrifying Doom Lord Xingxiao turned her gaze here, this refuge could become a slaughterhouse. Thank you, young Miss Zhang, and thank you, Sea Abyss City, Nan Shui Shui said, bowing solemnly to Zhang Lexuan. If Sea Abyss City had not offered help now, she had no idea how she would have led the battered Delong sect disciples out of this purgatory. She remembered how, at the start of the chaos, many sect forces had tried to break Mingdu's encirclement on their own, only to be ruthlessly cut down by the Sun Moon Empire's spirit tool, master regiments that had been lying in wait outside the city. Those teams, some formidable, hadn't made a ripple before being annihilated. Even the combined force of the Benti sect and the Tianhun Empire, after suffering terribly to break out of Mingdu's walls, had hit devastating resistance. A titled Douluo elder fell on the spot. The survivors were driven back into Mingdu in shattered disarray. As Nan Shui Shui looked over, she saw Princess Shujuju of the Star Luo Empire comforting a pale Princess Vina of the Tianhun Empire. Survivors from the Benti sect and the Tianhun Empire were injured, their clothes torn, faces hollowed by grief and exhaustion. Dubusi was not among them, hot-headed Benti sect leader. Dubusi had, early in the palace battle, charged into the palace core alone, attempting an impossible decapitation strike against Shu Tianran. The main Benti force, escorted by several experienced titled Douluo elders, had tried to break out with Princess Vina, but the moment they left the gate, they ran straight into Spirit Tool. Master regiments twisted and absorbed by destructive power, regiments named Imperial Dragon and Evil Monarch among them. Those regiments formed tight, efficient formations, backed by fixed-mount spirit tools controlled by 9th-rank spirit tool masters. The saturation of their strike overwhelmed the Benti team, which lacked Dubuzi's absolute combat power, only because one resolute titled Douluo of the Benti sect threw himself into the enemy formation at the last second, detonating his spirit core to blast open a gap at the cost of his own life, did the rest get a chance to pull back. Even then, their original plan hadn't been a reckless breakout. They intended to retreat quietly underground using specially designed burrowing spirit tools. The spirit tool masters guarding the city, however, had detected even that plan. Mingdu, above ground and below, and the surrounding airspace were saturated with Xingxiao's harmony network. Burrowing spirit tools, even 1,000 meters down, couldn't hide their energy signatures or metal structures. A pre-buried 8th rank earth-splitting spirit tool shell detonated, creating seismic waves that expelled the burrowing teams and their spirit tools from underground. Exposed on open ground, they were encircled by spirit tool master regiments and forced to fight to the death with only the Benti sect's powerful bodies and secret techniques. They clawed out a slim, chaotic retreat back into Mingdu. Remembering all that, Nan Shuishui's relief at being alive mixed with deep anxiety about the future. She no longer hesitated. Gripping her daughter Nan Chuchu's hand, she guided the Dilong sect disciples toward the shimmering gate, their lifeline. When Nan Chuchu stepped into the blue veil, she felt a gentle vertigo, as if wrapped in a warm, invisible force. Space and time momentarily blurred. The next instant, a fresh, slightly salty sea breeze washed over her, banishing the acrid stench of gunpowder and blood. She opened her eyes to a very different scene. Neat ranks of Sea Abyss City's golden guards stood before them, their black spirit tool armor gleaming coldly. They held polished, fully charged spirit tool firearms, eyes sharp and vigilant. Behind them, the immense spatial gate hummed steadily. The blue curtain of light reflected the faces of the newly arrived, shocked, still reeling. Beyond it lay the vast, sapphire ocean. White waves crashed rhythmically against the shore, a stark contrast to the ruin-strewn atmosphere of Mingdu. A modern city skyline rose not far off. Sleek skyscrapers, glass facades catching the sun, a few towers even piercing the clouds. Compared to Mingdu, the city was equally prosperous and advanced, but felt purer and more futuristic, its technology obvious even from a distance. How amazing, Nan Chuchu breathed, covering her mouth. In a blink, they had crossed thousands of kilometers, from Mingdu's hell to Sea Abyss City. She remembered that the trip from Dragon City to Mingdu had once taken the Dilong sect over a month by the best carriages. Even the fastest flying spirit tools would need days to fly from Sea Abyss City to Mingdu. The gate's instant transfer was a dimension-crushing difference. Nan Shuishui's own face showed awe. Even as a titled Douluo, she had never handled such profound spatial power. Spatial mastery at that depth was usually the domain of Super Douluo above 95th rank, and only Ultimate Douluo above 98th rank could begin to control it. Yet this gate carried tens of thousands of ordinary people, many without spirit power, safely and reliably across extreme distances. The scale and precision exceeded what any individual spirit master could manage. It scrambled established ideas about the limits of spirit tool technology. Everyone present felt the implication. With such strategic projection, Sea Abyss City could depart in the morning, strike by night, ignoring time and terrain. In any future conflict, that would be an overwhelming, perhaps decisive advantage. Nan Shuishui allowed herself a private sense of relief. Thankfully, the Dilong sect had long cultivated ties with Sea Abyss City over the 10,000-year profound ice marrow and the ice extreme divine crystal. Their interests were intertwined, half allies in a time when such alliances could save lives. Chapter 326, Black Tower Speculation. In the coming chaotic world, having an ally whose strength and technology far outstripped the age meant the Dilong sect, Earth Dragon sect, at least no longer had to fear its legacy being extinguished or having nowhere to go. Wow, so many people. On the docks, lively March 7th trailed the gentle, elegant Robin as they received and tended to the flood of refugees poured out from Mingdu. People spilled from the spatial gate like a tide, terrified, ragged, hollow-eyed, and Robin clicked her tongue, sympathy and concern in her pink-blue eyes. Has Mingdu really been reduced to this? Mingdu had collapsed into hell. Countless people had lost homes and loved ones. Many were on the verge of mental collapse. At a moment like that, Any shock could trigger a riot or complete despair. As a Harmony Pathstrider, it was Robin's role to step forward. Her body naturally radiated a soft, warm harmony force that flowed like sunlight, gently soothing fear and trauma, comforting souls racked by pain, and keeping them from plunging immediately into despair or violence. "Sister Robin, please, come quick, look at her," Yaguai called, rushing up with a woman so weak and ashen she looked half dead, eyes pleading. Shangguan Wei of the Common People's Alliance had been ravaged. Her mental barrier could no longer hold back the growing will to destroy. Strange, dark red flickers occasionally flashed in her pupils. Soon she would sink completely and become a creature of nothing but annihilation. Robin didn't hesitate. Leaving her broader comfort work, she reached out, slender, fair fingers, pure and colorless light coiling at their tips, and touched Shangguan Wei's glabella. Her formless harmony force, coordination and resonance made tangible, flowed slowly into the fractured mind like a delicate current, trying to soothe the destructive whispers and reharmonize the chaos. Then Robin's usual gentle smile tightened. Confusion and solemn concern cut across her lake green eyes. This force, it's rejecting harmony. She withdrew her fingers, more serious than anyone had ever seen her, and murmured, "This isn't right. It's far more complicated and strange than I expected." Sea Abyss City and Lu Jingming had kept close contact through special channels. From intelligence, Robin already knew Shangguan Wei was being eroded by destructive power and had prepared accordingly. Frontline reports suggested the attacker was likely the Lord of Destruction, Xing Xiao, an existence with both harmony and destruction authority, a former harmony emissary turned Lord of Destruction. Robin had adjusted her harmony output to deal with a mixed harmony destruction erosion. She expected a delicate operation to strip and harmonize those opposing influences. But when her harmony force probed Shangguan Wei's core, the results shattered her expectations. "No, this is completely wrong." A sharp glint passed through Robin's eyes. She shook her head, voice steady and grave. "The one who directly caused this isn't Xing Xiao. The energy here is purely destruction, the most primitive kind, and coated in an utterly corrupt, malevolent mental residue. There's not even a trace of harmony in it." This was not guesswork. If Xing Xiao had acted personally, given her identity and power makeup, there would be at least a twisted echo of harmony entwined with the destructive force. Xing Xiao's old habits and foundation as an emissary would leave a detectable imprint. For Robin, a harmony pathstrider, that absence was incontrovertible. The conclusion was bleakly simple. Someone else had planted the seed of destruction. The evil mental residue that clung to it felt parasitic, cold and manipulative, an aura that toyed with hearts and desecrated souls. A dangerous premonition rose in Robin. If not Xing Xiao, then who? And what kind of power was this? A barely perceptible spatial ripple announced Herta's arrival. She appeared lounging on her iconic staff, a huge blue gem set atop its head. She glanced at Shangguan Wei with mild interest, a knowing light in her eyes. "Looks like Mingdu's mud is hiding more than just Xing Xiao. There's a craftier fish at the bottom." She waved a hand, and an analytical ice-blue stream of data light washed over Shangguan Wei, scanning her completely. Herta wanted to see which Lord of Destruction had such subtle methods. Mingdu had already become a cauldron of chaos. Xing Xiao herself hadn't hesitated to attack Fei Xiao of Shanzhou, ambushing that heaven-shattering general. Yet another Lord of Destruction had been ghosting through the darkest corners without leaving a trace. The first name that surfaced in Herta's vast database was one she disliked intensely. Of course, Huanlong. The ice-blue light faded. Herta smirked and pressed the wide witch's hat on her head, voice threaded with contempt. The power deep within Shangguan Wei's mind was like a coiled viper, a pure will toward destruction, wrapped in an evil mental influence that pried at people's deepest fears and desires. Aside from Huanlong, who rose to Lord of Destruction from Suyang and specialized in manipulating hearts and minds, no one fit that profile. If I'm right, she's the unfortunate servant Shu Tianran managed to summon. Herta tapped her chin, amusement and sarcasm in her tone, as if the matter amused her. "I don't know whether the Sun Moon Empire is incredibly fortunate or cursed tenfold. The Holy Grail War managed to summon 2 incarnations of Lords of Destruction at once. You don't see that kind of luck every day." Beside her, Changli held an exquisite parasol woven of moonlight. Her gentle gaze swept over the dazed refugees. None had yet recovered from Mingdu's horrors. Fear still clung to their faces. She sighed softly. For a single city to harbor two lords of destruction at the same time, escaping alive to Sea Abyss City is already the greatest mercy they could hope for. Two lords of destruction? Little San's face drained of color. Compared with companions like Changli and Ye Gai, who weren't from the Honkai Star Rail world, March 7th understood the magnitude of the danger. She had heard countless legends of the Lords of Destruction on the train. The notion that two such catastrophic incarnations had been hiding in that city made her tremble. Herta rolled her eyes. Luckily, they're only memory incarnations for now. Their power is nothing like their true bodies. If their true forms had come down, let alone two at once, even in a one-on-one, I wouldn't pick a fight with any of them, Herta added with an exasperated flick of her hand. If emissaries' true bodies had descended, their mutual destruction would be inevitable. Herta had no wish to die. She still had mysteries she wanted Lu Jingming to reveal. In her original universe, nearly all knowledge and truth were cataloged and controlled by the Aeon Nous, a vast computational network that had already decided every future with cold precision. Even hailed as a genius, the domains she could reach were bound by what Nous permitted. The unknown had already been mapped. The boundaries of knowledge had been sealed. Any great discovery ultimately led to a single conclusion: now already knows. No true genius wanted to be confined forever within a predetermined frame. The thirst to push the limits of knowledge was what drove them, but beneath Nous's absolute gaze, the frontiers had been closed. Any genius who tries to cross that boundary and pry into what lies beyond the known will eventually meet the cold steel of that silent lord. She is a terrifying existence whose specialty is hunting geniuses who overstep the line. Who knows how many members of the Genius Club have died by her hand? She is the sharpest, coldest blade in the erudition's fist, the one who enforces their ruthless omniscience. Tracing this chaotic situation back to its origin, some of the fault lay with Herta, but Lu Jingming was far from blameless. Who had told him not to restrict his memory banks in the first place, allowing the Holy Grail to summon all manner of demons and monsters across the land? And Herta, as an Aeon emanator of intellect, had always upheld the highest principle: a gentleman does not stand beneath a dangerous wall alone. She loved to call for teams, righteous coalitions, efficient group fights. To have her, a noble emanator and averse to solo troubles, face the siege of two destruction path emanator memory bodies by herself would be degrading and out of character. Fortunately, she didn't have to step in personally this time. In Mingdu, Fei Xiao and Jing Yuan, two true emanators of the hunt, were holding the line. Jing Liu, the peerless master of the sword Dao whose blades cut like heaven's judgment, was there as well. Even if Xing Xiao and Huanlong truly joined forces, they would gain little advantage against such spearheads of the hunt. But Huanlong has hidden herself so deeply, Herta mused, stroking her smooth chin. A flash of wise calculation passed through her eyes. Even when Xing Xiao stirred up such a commotion, she held back. I doubt her ambitions are small. She likely has other plans. With her penchant for toying with hearts and manipulating fate, that Xu Qianren might have been nothing more than a pawn or a lure. She could be lurking in the shadows, plotting something far more interesting and far more dangerous. Changli beside her slowly folded her exquisite parasol. Her gentle eyes carried worry. Whatever the Lord of Destruction is planning, the waters of Douluo Continent will be muddier and deeper after this. March 7th nodded vigorously, her small face still drawn with lingering fear. The arrival of two Lords of Destruction, even if they were only restricted memory bodies, was enough to fling a continent into chaos. Then, Lady Herta, Sister Robin, can she, Shangguan Wei'er, still be saved? Yegi's voice trembled with urgency. The revelation that the perpetrator was another Lord of Destruction was shocking, but what mattered to her now was whether Shangguan Wei'er, lying on the ground with fading breath, could be saved. The chain of events rushed through her mind. Shangguan Wei'er had originally been taken by Dr. Mebius for study. Mebius's obsessive curiosity about life drove her to try to suppress or reverse the erosion of destruction. Then the Antimatter Legion struck Mingdu on a massive scale. In the chaos, Mebius found something she considered even more interesting than the sample in her hands and, decisive to a fault, returned Shangguan Weier as her condition worsened. Mingdu was saturated with the Antimatter Legion's aura of slaughter and destruction. That homologous energy hung over the city like a poison fog. Stimulated by it, the fragile consciousness Shangguan Weier had painstakingly sealed, already tainted by destruction, began to riot. The seal nearly collapsed. In desperation, Yegai had taken the deteriorating Shangguan Weier through the space portal from Sea Abyss City to where Robin and the others were, pinning her hopes on Robin. Lu Jingming had said that if Xing Xiao had been the aggressor, Robin's homologous affinity might find a way. But now it turned out the culprit was not Xing Xiao at all, but Huan Long, an eerier lord of destruction, better at corroding minds. The news hit Yegai like ice water, and she looked to Herta and Robin with pleading eyes. Robin shook her head softly, apology and helplessness clear on her face. With my current power, I can only temporarily suppress the raging destruction consciousness, delay the moment she fully succumbs. To fundamentally cure her, to purify that mark of destruction, I'm afraid. Her words trailed off, the meaning obvious. The force of a Lord of Destruction is inherently overwhelming, and Huanlong's rank and power far exceeded Robin's. The destruction mark, embedded deep in Shangguan Weier's soul and body, was like a rampant parasite, already entwined with her soul origin and physiology. If the traces had been left by Xing Xiao, Robin might have had a method thanks to the Harmony Path's faint kinship. But against Huanlong's pure, malignant destruction imprint, she felt powerless. She won't die yet, Herta said flatly, casting a glance at Shangguan Weier, her breathing weak but steady, and then faded amid subtle spatial ripples. Let this little bird of harmony reinforce the seal and keep her alive. We'll figure something out when that little guy, Lu Jingming, a Ming, comes back. He always surprises us. If a being of Huanlong's caliber had personally branded someone and the mark had been discovered early, Herta might have had some confidence to attempt a cure. But Shangguan Weier had endured and suppressed that power for far too long. It had seeped through her flesh and blood, through every strand of her mind, down into her bones. It had become part of her. Even Herta did not have absolute confidence she could strip it away without harming the original. Huanlong hailed from the Aeon of Abundance and was a pure mental energy entity, an expert at manipulating soul and mind. Her imprints would not be easy to decipher or remove. Soul-level operations and healing were not Herta's primary expertise. If Ruan Mei, obsessed with the creation of life, had been present, she might have conjured a clever scheme. Herta could only give the most realistic, rational judgment. She stopped short of saying there is no hope for the sake of Ye Gai and Lu Jingming. Don't worry, things haven't reached their worst. Robin reached out and patted Ye Gai's trembling shoulders. Her tone was gentle as spring sunlight, and the harmony power woven through her words soothed the soul and quieted the heart. A Ming, he always creates miracles. Since he said he'd find a way, believe him, he will. The harmony power spreading from Robin changed from an attempt at violent purification into something gentler, a warm, tenacious trickle that bound and reinforced the failing mental seal step by step. A soft light flowed between them, momentarily holding the destruction aura at bay. Shangguan Weier's pained expression loosened a fraction. Yegai carefully supported the unconscious woman, and under Robin's calming words and the touch of harmony, her panic eased. For now, there was no better option than to trust Lu Jingming's return. Huanlong, it's her! Lu Jingming, on the distant Mingdu battlefield, received Robin's report almost instantly through a special line of communication. His brows rose and his gaze drifted toward the heart of the energy storm in the Mingdu Imperial Palace, the epicenter of the battle. It was the most violent clash anywhere in the city. Karna's blinding divine light like a sun, the shadow of the 1,000-meter dark sacred dragon. Long Xiao had become, tearing and colliding with it. Behind Ye Shishui, the death god's tower, wrapped in resentful spirits, exuded a chilling deathly aura. Dubuzi's 100-meter-tall dark green giant form struck with blows laced with space-corroding venom. Kong Deming's silver moon divine light shield flickered wildly under constant assaults. These forces, each city destroyingly powerful, clashed and annihilated one another. The once majestic imperial palace had been reduced to scorched ruin. Yet Huanlong, Shu Tianran's attendant and a lord of destruction, had not shown any trace in this melee from start to finish. Lu Jingming's mind raced. As fellow lords of destruction under Nanook, Xingxiao had surely known of Huanlong's existence. It was highly likely Xingxiao had known from the beginning, which could explain her earlier cooperation with Shu Tianran. Perhaps the two destruction envoys had already reached some unspoken agreement before any of this began. Chapter 328, Black Abyss White Flower. First-rated power, Mingdu had become a purgatory. War swept the entire city, while Huanlong remained inactive, hidden in the shadows. Xingxiao continued to send wave after wave of antimatter legions to butcher everything in sight. Aside from her sudden sneak attack on Feixiao earlier, she had made no other major moves. What were they waiting for? What were they preparing? Lu Jingming frowned. Something was off. He had once supposed Xingxiao intended to use the antimatter legion to wreck Mingdu, harvest vast amounts of life and negative emotion, and thereby absorb huge reserves of negative energy to strengthen herself. Now it looked like that might be only a superficial, incidental goal. Their deeper plan was probably to turn this battlefield into an anchor that bound nearly all of Douluo Continent's top combat forces here. Mingdu had become a gigantic quagmire, drawing in at least 70% of the visible top fighters on the continent. The Sea God Pavilion elders and elite forces of Shrek Academy, the strongest of the body sect, the soul masters of Mingde Hall, the titled Douluo from the Heaven Soul and Star Luo empires, the contingent sent by Sea Abyss City, and the servants called by the Holy Grail War. The core combat forces and the highest-end military assets of nearly every faction were trapped inside the besieged city, restraining and consuming one another. That situation suggested two likely possibilities. First, they might be trying to finish it in one fell swoop, wipe out Douluo Star's core resistance here. If those top fighters were eliminated, the planet would no longer possess enough power to resist the antimatter legions, and destruction would be inevitable. Second, it could be the old stratagem of luring the tiger from its mountain, tie the major powerhouses down in Mingdu, and leave their rear bases, key cities, and legacy territories exposed and vulnerable. That would be the opportune moment to execute truly decisive strikes. Most likely, Lu Jingming thought, it was a diversion. He calmly guided the hundreds of meters tall wooden colossus, condensing a giant fist that smashed into the ground and drove the still struggling Titan giant ape deeper into the pit. A thought struck him, and his mind cleared. If Shu Tianran's servant was Huanlong, and this lord of destruction, who excelled at sowing chaos, was not appearing, then either she was biding her time in the shadows, or she wasn't in Mingdu at all. He inclined toward the latter. Huanlong delighted in toying with hearts and destinies, steering mortals toward self-destruction and dragging whole civilizations into eternal ruin. Shu Tianran's present actions, abandoning Mingdu's foundation, sacrificing millions of people, making deals with devils, were perfectly in line with such manipulation. If his servant truly was Huanlong, these wild, destructive measures made sense. Huanlong's influence must be behind them. According to the basic rules of the Holy Grail War, Shu Tianran's existence was the basis for Huanlong's manifestation and her glaring weakness. With Huanlong's cunning, she would never overlook that flaw. She would have made arrangements. So where was she? What was she doing? Suddenly, a key idea flashed through Lu Jingming's mind. He thought of the only thing on this planet that could attract a being like Huanlong and might allow her to break free from the Holy Grail's constraints and cast off her servant form. His expression changed. The planet's core, or more precisely, the manifestation of this world's life, the golden tree. He licked his dry lips, a trace of helplessness and rueful admiration in his heart. He had underestimated these ancient, wily lords of destruction. Whether Xingxiao or Huanlong, their true objective from the start probably was not the Holy Grail with its supposed wish-granting powers and memory manifestations. As envoys of destruction, they would not trust such an unknown force. They believed only in their own absolute power. Instead, they were scheming to use some unique feature or treasure of this world to free themselves from the Grail's shackles, discard their servant identities, and fully enact their Tao of destruction in this universe. From the beginning, their greedy eyes had never truly lingered on the Grail War's farce. They had been fixed on a more distant, fundamental prize. Lu Jingming felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. These destroyers from the Collapse universe were legendary troublemakers. If he did not possess his special authority, the power to break conventions, call for aid, and summon forces far stronger than this world's, he might truly be in danger against a scheme crafted by two collaborating lords of destruction. If Huanlong seized the Golden Tree and used Douluo Star's plane core to fashion a perfect physical body, she could immediately recover and exert the terrifying strength of a first-class god. If she had more time to absorb the cataclysmic negative energy from Mingdu and the whole continent, she could quickly rise to God King level. Even at first-class god level, with the god realm distracted, she could obliterate Douluo Continent alone, leaving ruin everywhere. If both Huanlong and Xingxiao achieved their goals, planet-sized annihilation would provide Shangxiao the energy to advance unchecked. They might even create a black hole passage to the Tomb of Gods and drink in eons of death and negative energy, becoming a darkness that devoured light and bringing irreversible ultimate destruction to this universe. If he failed here, even the memory bodies of these two lords of destruction could trigger a chain reaction that would topple the whole world. True powerhouses, even when constrained, found unique ways to grow stronger and pursue their pure extremes. Lu Jingming imagined the antimatter legions ravaging the universe, stars going dark one after another. He lowered his head and addressed the Titan giant ape still struggling in the pit. "My apologies, big guy," he said softly, tone calm but edged with killing intent. "There's no personal grudge here. I admire your stubbornness, but our positions differ. For the sake of my plan, I have to ask you to die here." He had no time to waste. In his hand, the peculiar holy spear, born from the fusion of the black abyss and the white flower spirit, began to hum. The ultimate black of decomposition and the pure white of creation coiled along the spear shaft like twin dragons, forming a distinct black and white stream of light suffused with the dual law power of annihilation and birth. The Titan giant ape lifted its head, pupils rimmed in blood, eyes locked on Lu Jingming suspended above him. Though repeatedly crushed by the wooden colossus and eroded by the withering domain, battered and bleeding, he still wore a ferocious, indomitable expression. With what remained of his strength, he roared, "Come on, kid. If you've got the guts, come try. It's not that easy to kill your Titan grandpa." As a level 98 Super Douluo and a vicious beast, he believed his physical body could shake mountains. Even diminished, he could not be easily killed by someone not yet a titled Douluo. Lu Jingming's face took on a calm, sacred expression as he began the incantation to release the spear's true power. "I am the black that devours all. I am the white that nurtures all. I was born before creation. I exist after annihilation." The spear trembled in his hand and rose higher. Its black and white tip pointed steadily at the mountain-sized ape in the pit. Black abyss white flower, first-rated power, holy spear bloom. The moment the words left his lips, an absolute pitch-black light erupted from the spear tip. It seemed to devour light and matter itself. Wherever that light passed, air decomposed to its basic particles, dust and moisture vanished as if torn from existence. Even stable space rippled and contorted, as if this power of decomposition were forcing reality apart. The black light that erased being moved faster than thought. End of chapter. The Titan giant ape felt an unprecedented, fatal crisis. He let out a world-shattering final roar and hurled every scrap of spirit power and life origin into one desperate last act. His gravity domain compressed to its limit, forming a pitch-black orb of crushing force that collapsed inward like a hole in the world, threatening to swallow light itself. The gravitational waves tore at the surrounding space, leaving fine, black fissures. He tried to use that last reserve to block the killing stroke. But the black light of termination cleaved through it as if nothing could resist it, an absence that pierced being itself. It passed silently through the gravity barrier, unhindered by its warp of space, and advanced with unstoppable momentum. Wherever it went, energy, matter, even space seemed to revert to the most primordial nothingness. It was as if a brush had drawn one deep, 100-meter-long stroke of absolute black across the canvas of reality. Lu Jingming slowly lowered the holy spear in his hand. Its radiance faded. His gaze fell calmly into the deep pit. Half of a mountain-sized, charred, hair-covered mass remained. Ming, the Titan giant ape. The violent, arrogant fluctuations of power that had once radiated between heaven and earth were gone. Had Lu not already formed a soul core and possessed an unusually rapid spirit recovery, almost on par with a veteran titled Douluo, his first-rated power, pushed beyond its limits and emptied of nearly everything, might not have sufficed to annihilate so tenacious a vicious beast whose cultivation spanned more than 100,000 years. The Titan giant ape's pure power and defense were probably only surpassed by the top 3 among the original 10 vicious beasts of the spirit beast world, and his gravity control domain could change the battlefield itself. He had the right to contend with a limit Douluo for a time. But fighting long enough to win was another matter entirely. Even so, every trick Lu had used, borrowing the White Flower's creative power and the Stigmata's authority to imitate a top-tier wood release from the 5 villages, condensing a 100-meter wooden man for suppression, and finally forcing the Black Abyss White Flower's first-rated power through a spirit fusion skill, had burned through stupendous reserves of spirit power and mental strength. If he had done this before condensing his soul core, he would never have maintained such sustained fighting ability. Even keeping that 100-meter wooden man active would likely have drained him completely. Lu's face did not change as he watched the 100,000-year spirit ring begin to rise from Ming's cooling corpse, its energy throbbing like blood slowly surfacing. Beside it, a spirit bone cast a faint crystalline light. He produced a specially made spirit tool, its surface etched with intricate spatial runes, and carefully collected and sealed the 2 treasures. They were of little use to him personally. His power system long ago surpassed dependence on spirit rings or spirit bones, but they were priceless assets for Sea Abyss City and for any force that needed to be built up in the future. Even with the super-spec advantage of the 100,000-year stigmata, a spirit ring and spirit bone from a top-tier vicious beast were rare enough to drive any faction mad. And Ming was no ordinary 100,000-year beast. He was a pinnacle vicious beast. The quality of his spirit items was the very best. Ming, far off New Tian, the Azure Dragon who had been locked in ferocious combat with Raiden Mei, felt a violent wrench in his heart. He perceived, with the brutal clarity of a bonded life aura, that the life force of his companion Ming had been snuffed out like a candle in a gale. He turned, and in an instant his massive dragon eyes narrowed, catching sight of the mangled half-corpse in the pit, and Lu Jingming using a spirit tool to collect the spirit ring. Rage, grief, despair, and hatred, an accumulation of 10,000 years, erupted like a volcano in his chest. Calm and reason snapped. Roar! New Tian's anguished roar tore through the sky above Mingdu like thunder. The sound waves churned the clouds themselves. Second Dad! Tong Wutong had just clashed heads with Wang Chuer, shaken and bloodied. She looked instinctively toward New Tian's roar. When she saw the tragic scene in the pit, the Titan giant ape's ruined body, and Lu Jingming taking the spirit ring, her face crumpled in shock, fury, and sorrow. Her fingers white-knuckled around the clear sky hammer, and her whole frame trembled with the impact of grief and rage. What do you want? Why annihilate us like this? She demanded, glaring at Wang Chuer, who strikingly resembled her. Tong Wutong's powder blue eyes burned, but beneath the anger lay confusion and unbearable grievance. She could not fathom why they, who had not openly made enemies of Lu Jingming and his allies, should be met with such merciless slaughter. Wang Chuer's golden dragon spear was steady, its tip aimed at Tong Wutong's heart. Her voice was cold, unwavering. This isn't about personal hatred or worldly gain. This is fate, an old script written for you and me. The author of that script is your God King Father. He is the true culprit behind everything that has happened here today. You have a grudge against my father? Tong Wutong bit her lower lip. The only explanation she could summon was that Wang Chuer must have something against Tang San, the God Realm enforcer she had always been taught to revere. Why else would Wang Chuer speak with such naked contempt? Why don't you ask your just and righteous father yourself? Wang Chuer sneered. Ask him if he knowingly broke the law for his own purposes, if he openly violated the God Realm statutes he swore to uphold, interfered with the lower realm's natural course, and toyed with fate. Bloodline origin aside, Tang Wutong had been told since childhood that the man known as her father, Tang San, was a paragon, fair, strict, and selfless, dedicated to the God Realm's order. No divinity she had met had ever slandered him, not even Uncle Z, the god of destruction, who had never been on the warmest terms with Tang San, had spoken so viciously. Wang Chuer's words were a hostile, one-sided attack, and Tang Wutong did not want to accept them. But in the marrow of her doubt, there was a sharp, unavoidable ache. Her father's divine sense had instructed her to seek out Lu Jingming and make a good impression, hinting that it was important. Yet Lu Jingming had not only turned openly against her, but had personally killed her second dad, the Titan giant ape who had loved her like a daughter. The contradiction burned like poison. Emotional waves battered Tang Wutong's mind. A subtle, golden sea god trident mark began to rise on her brow, pushing up beneath the skin. It bloomed into a dazzling emblem, the mark of divinity. A majestic, godlike aura filled the air. Brilliant golden divine force wrapped her like an eggshell, and she looked every inch a goddess descended to the mortal realm. That aura rose uncontrollably, breaking through limits. Is it coming? Has it been forced to this point? Lu Jingming, having just stowed his spirit tool, felt the shift and turned. He narrowed his eyes. The expression on his face hardened. He knew the real battle was just beginning. Ishtar, get ready. Target the divine sense mark on Tang Wutong's brow. You must finish it in one strike. Nearby, Guye watched with cold calculation and issued the order to the relaxed Ishtar beside her. A killing intent toward Tang San and a hungry anticipation for the forthcoming clash of divinities flashed through her eyes. Perhaps I won't even need to move. Ishtar's voice was as placid as ever. Her gaze casually swept to a white-haired woman standing not far off, sword held in a posture of silent, lethal calm. When it comes to slaying divinities, that swordswoman might be more suitable than I am. Wherever Ishtar's gaze fell, Jingliu's black eye patch fluttered away in the wind, revealing scarlet eyes burning with battle intent. The longsword in her hand, condensed from ultimate ice crystals, seemed to respond to that intent, emitting a clear, cold hum. The chill along the blade's edge bit deeper, as if it had longed to taste the blood of a divinity. Across the field, Artoria raised the holy sword again, its glorious radiance answering her will. Vast energy converged into a dazzling golden stream as she intoned, Excalibur! A scorching torrent of light poured forth like a breached celestial river, its heat and brilliance capable of vaporizing steel, flattening cities, obliterating armies. Where the beam swept, the earth melted and was carved into deep ravines, the rocks at the edges flowing like hot lava. Even so, that mountain-moving blow was stopped by a seemingly thin but extraordinarily resilient light blue divine force shield. The golden stream split like a river striking a reef, skimming past Xiaowu's body on both sides before slamming into distant ruins and setting off violent explosions and roaring infernos. Artoria's heroic brow tightened. How many times had she invoked her noble phantasm now? She'd lost count. Even she couldn't truly tear through Xiaowu's precarious but deeply rooted divine shield. Mingdu had become a purgatory. Negative energy, death, fear, despair hung thick in the air and fed servants endlessly. She no longer worried about energy shortage. She couldn't flippantly use her noble phantasm like a normal attack, but releasing it repeatedly was still easy. Yet even an onslaught of a city-level noble phantasm could not finish the opponent. The only consolation, Xiaowu's divine aura was visibly weakening, and her divine force fluctuations were growing unstable and faint. The divinity of this world, their vitality and defense are ridiculous. Too hard to kill. Kuchulain leaned on his demonic spear and smiled wryly. His figure had become blurry and translucent, exhausted to the brink of collapse. He had held on purely by the battle continuation skill, sustained only by an indomitable warrior's will. From his time in this world and the intelligence he'd quietly gathered at Shrek Academy, he knew that while the top human powerhouses and the 100,000-year spirit beasts were formidable, few could stand up to top servants. An opponent who could withstand karma-type noble phantasms and constantly block the sword of promised victory like this could only be a genuine divinity from the legends of this world. Xiao Wu hadn't displayed world-shattering power, but her unkillable defense and tenacious vitality alone marked her as true divinity. Her vast, pure divine force and mental might confirmed it. Xiao Wu herself was silently cursing her luck. Artoria's instinct skill was too sharp. Several carefully planned fatal strikes had been predicted and dodged, and each time her noble phantasm was unleashed, Xiao Wu's counterblow had forced Artoria to drain Origin Divine Force to defend, aggravating an old injury sustained under Ma Hongjun's Phoenix Divine Force. The latent injury flared up as her continuous suppression of pain waned, gradually degrading her combat state. Her Divine Force recovery could not keep pace with consumption. Then, amid the ferocious clash, Xiao Wu sensed something else, a warm, majestic divine sense fluctuation from not far off, intensely familiar. It filled her with impossible closeness and joy, like the aura of the most important person in her life. But her thoughts were wrapped in fog. She couldn't place the face attached to that warmth. The contradiction stunned her for a heartbeat. Almost at once, she perceived another aura, equally familiar, but rougher, heavier, and receding forever. The sense of loss hit her like a cold tidal wave. Her heart seized with an indescribable sorrow, as if some indispensable loved one had been wrenched away. Why? Does my heart hurt like this? Xiao Wu raised a hand to her eye and found cold tears streaming down her cheek. She had no idea why she was crying, but that soul-deep grief crashed over her and robbed her of action. For a moment she stood dazed, forgetting to attack. What's wrong with her all of a sudden? Cuchulainn and Artoria exchanged a glance, confusion and alarm in their eyes. They could sense a storm of intense energy from a distance, top-tier powerhouses clashing, but both were spent and barely able to focus on the nearby threat. Dealing with this unkillable Xiao Wu had already drained them to their limits. Herta, get me Ningguang and Ganyu, emergency link now. Lu Jingming slammed open the advanced communication spirit tool on his wrist. Mingdu's energy net was chaotic from the mixture of battles. Without Herta's super-era technical support, he couldn't have reached Ningguang and Ganyu in Shrek City. Heh, a little late to be surprised, isn't it? Herta's playful voice chattered in his mind. Streams of light blue data, like living things, converged in the void and formed a clear optical screen showing Shrek City in real time. On the screen, the view swept south to the strategic outworks before the Stardew Great Forest, the first, most solid line of defense against beast tides, where countless fortifications stood. Dust and smoke bloomed from the forest's edge like a descending sandstorm. Endless spirit beasts with blood-red eyes surged out like a breached flood, dense, relentless, overwhelming. The roar of four-legged beasts tramplingly coalesced into a terrifying shockwave that made the ground tremble. The sky itself turned dark. Flying spirit beasts blotted the sun and dyed the heavens ink black. Even sunlight was swallowed. It looked like the end of the world. This, a beast tide? On this scale? Impossible. Gu Yue's figure flashed beside Lu Jingming. Her gaze stayed fixed on the screen, disbelief and shock crystallizing on her beautiful face. Ditian would never begin a beast tide this big without reason, and certainly not without my permission. He hasn't sent me any message. Before she finished, several massive figures streaked across the screen and made her pupils shrink. The three-headed crimson demon mastiff, the Red King, its body as large as a small mountain, three heads roaring, and the dark golden dreadclaw bear, Bear Monarch, its body ringed in dark golden light as its claws tore the earth. These were core vicious beast elders from the Stardew Great Forest. Their appearance in the tide meant this was no small disturbance. It was an unprecedented all-out war launched by the entire forest. Ditian wouldn't act without your consent. But what if whoever is leading this isn't Ditian anymore? Lu Jingming's voice was low and grave. He'd already pictured the worst. Gu Yue's main body was asleep deep within the great forest, but her clone, holding most of her consciousness, maintained a close link to the forest. Given Ditian's absolute loyalty to the Silver Dragon King, he would have informed or consulted Gu Yue's clone before risking a continent-changing beast tide. Yet the clone had no idea. That left only one explanation. Ditian was compromised. On the Douluo Continent, Few things could threaten a vicious beast king like Ditian, who'd cultivated for nearly 900,000 years and fought at demigod levels. To operate in the forest depths within Ditian's lair, without alerting Guyue's main body or the other vicious beasts, there was really only one candidate, Huanlong, the Lord of Destruction. Hidden, skilled in manipulating mental force and souls, she would be able to control Ditian and seize command of the spirit beasts. Controlling Ditian and making Stardo's spirit beasts march for her, this is Huanlong's perverse art, Lu Jingming said, his eyes going cold. She doesn't like crude devastation. She uses others to break civilizations from within, stoking conflict so people destroy themselves. With Huanlong's strength, even a memory body, and Shrek Academy's defenses now weakened, Xuanzi and several Sea God Pavilion advanced Douluo elders trapped in Mingdu, the Academy's remaining internal forces, led by Yan Xiaojie, Kai Mayer, and a few Dean-level fighters, couldn't stop her. Rather than flatten Shrek City outright, Huanlong chose to control Ditian and unleash a beast tide that would sweep the Douluo Continent, intending to ignite racial hatred and civil war. Once Shrek City was breached, human fury would incinerate any sympathy for spirit beasts. History told how easily fear and slaughter sowed hatred. Heaven Soul, Star Luo, the Do spirit empires, and all mortal powers would retaliate, and the age-old contradictions between humans and spirit beasts would explode into full-scale war. That was the spectacle Huanlong craved. More malicious still, while everyone focused on the front lines, she could infiltrate Shrek Academy's depths and seize the Golden Tree, the root of the world's origin, breaking free from the Grail's bindings and reshaping her divine body. In one stroke, she'd manipulate the continent's might against itself. Guyue ground her silver teeth, rage lighting her eyes. Huanlong dared exploit her main body's slumber to seize the Star Do Great Forest, the last pure land and foundation of the spirit beasts. It was provocation of the highest order. Deep beneath the Lake of Life's placid surface, in the independent subspace carved by the Silver Dragon King, that slumbering silver giant opened her amethyst dragon eyes. Massive fury swelled in those vertical pupils. Her hundreds of meters long body stretched. The grinding of hard silver scales rang like metal. When her wings spread, overwhelming dragon might rumbled through the subspace, causing even the ambient spatial barriers to hum. Huan. Long. Her voice thundered with regal rage. She readied spatial force to rip open a portal and strike at the Lord of Destruction. But the space around her had been entangled as by countless strange chains of ethereal blue starlight, writhing like living venomous snakes, forming a net that hermetically shut her subspace off from the outside. It was a lock so stable brute force couldn't break it instantly. Silver light flared and her colossal body condensed, folding into a slender young woman in a plain white dress. Silver hair cascaded like a waterfall. Her purple eyes held sovereign majesty and aloof nobility. This was Guyue's true form, the Silver Dragon King. She unleashed spatial blades to sever the nearest chains. A dozen snapped and dispersed into glittering starlight, but more chains shot from the void in response. Guyue's face darkened. She had been outmaneuvered. This hidden subspace had been her safest refuge, created to hide from the God Realm's sight. Now it had become her prison. To escape, she could rip the law of space itself and shatter the subspace and seal, but such an instant collapse would unleash destructive turbulence that would flare her old injuries and could damage her foundational power. It might not be worth the cost. Worse, the Starlight Seal was tied, subtly, to the Lake of Life's vast life force as an energy core. Dismantling it would take time. Guyue's expression went colder still. Only Ditian knew the exact coordinates of this hidden place. Ditian's loyalty to her was carved deep into his soul. There was no chance he'd betray her willingly. That left only one truth. Huanlong had not only controlled Ditian, but had extracted the secret of her slumbering location from his soul memories. Otherwise, no one could have found this place so precisely or pre-built a seal that specifically targeted spatial abilities. A helpless, self-mocking feeling flickered through her. She had been trapped in the trap she herself had made. She drew a measured breath and forced calm. With the partial power she had recovered, she could smash out, if she accepted the cost. But the backlash to her old injuries and foundation was unacceptable. so she began to work like a master craftsman. Instead of a violent break, she patiently gathered divine force and started to wear down the energy nodes of the seal. Time was dangerous, but necessary. Thankfully, Ming is here. Thinking of Lu Jingming, the one who always brought unexpected hope, Guye's turmoil eased a little. Lu Jingming stood with her side. He would not let Huanlong incite endless bloodshed between humans and spirit beasts unchecked. If he could mediate and control the situation, even the fall of Shrek City might be mitigated. As for Shrek Academy, Guyue's expression hardened in a way that showed she had other priorities. From the spirit beast's perspective, a weakening of human top forces was not entirely bad. With a reliable ally outside, she no longer had to force a quick success. She suppressed her impatience and began to slowly decompose the seal's nodes. The sooner she could get out, the better. She wanted to settle this score with Huanlong. To use and trample the spirit beast race like this would be answered in blood. Chapter 331, Huanlong and Dician, 2 chapters in 1. The spirit beast race was already at a disadvantage under human pressure. After this battle, who knew how many powerful clansmen would fall, and humanity's fear and hatred of spirit beasts would surge to unprecedented heights. Any hope for peaceful coexistence would recede even further. The thought hardened Guyuena's purple eyes, and murder simmered beneath their surface. High in the clouds, a thick mist rolled like a white ocean. A colossal black dragon, large enough to blot out the sky, hung motionless within it. Its mountain-sized head shifted slightly as eyelids plated with hard scales slowly parted to reveal a pair of enormous golden dragon eyes. Those eyes should have belonged to Ditian, the golden-eyed Black Dragon King, eyes that once radiated majesty and authority. Now they lacked steadiness. Instead, a human-like smile flashed through them, playful and mocking, like a haughty spectator enjoying a spectacle he'd personally arranged. "Heh, she's awake, as I expected." A lazy, alluring female voice echoed across the clouds and into the mental plane. It belonged to the Lord of Destruction, Huanlong. She sounded entirely unsurprised by Guyuena's awakening, almost pleased. If she could, she coveted the flawless silver dragon body, sleeping at the bottom of the lake. The purest dragon god bloodline and boundless potential, the perfect vessel for the Lord of Destruction. But according to the fragmentary memories she'd scavenged from the Black Dragon's mind, the Silver Dragon King's essence was exceptional. At her peak, she could reach what this world called the God King level. That was well beyond what Huanlong, who had only descended as a limited memory body, could seize and control, no matter. Once her plan unfolded and the planet was swallowed by destruction and chaos, so-called God King power would merely be a toy. For now, it was far more practical to seize a physical body suited to the current stage, one she could use effectively and obtain with less difficulty. Huanlong's consciousness inspected the Black Dragon's body, the temporary vessel she occupied, with a hint of disdain. Compared to Ditian's male dragon form, full of dark power but rough around the edges, she actually preferred a female vessel like BG, whose vast life aura was elegant and beautiful. Still, to launch the super beast tide that would sweep the continent, to maximally inflame hatred between humans and spirit beasts and drive them into mutual destruction, co-opting the spirit beast god's body, an embodiment of supreme deterrence among spirit beasts, was the most convenient and efficient choice. "What kind of monster are you? Get out of my body and give it back to me," came Ditian's roar. Within the Black Dragon's vast sea of consciousness, Ditian's own awareness had been compressed and locked into a corner. He had been forced into human form, a figure in a black robe, bound by countless eerie chains of azure starlight, half submerged in a cold ocean of mental force he no longer controlled. He couldn't move. He struggled, lifting his head to glare at the enormous, seductive figure floating above his inner world, eyes full of humiliation and towering rage. That figure was devastatingly alluring. A woman in a dark green kyeongsum with a high slit that accentuated devastating curves. An ornate lotus-like ornament rested on her head. Dark golden plant patterns writhed slowly over her exposed skin as if alive. Several large, blood-red lotuses rotated lazily around her, radiating terrifying energy fluctuations. In one hand, she held a slender round fan, with which she fanned herself languidly. Every gesture carried a mysterious, fatal charm, combined with absolute arrogance and coldness that kept observers at arm's length. This was the Lord of Destruction, Huanlong, as she appeared on her own mental plane. "No problem, little lizard. I'll give it back to you," Huanlong murmured, a coy smile hidden behind her fan, her voice light and teasing. "Of course. That is, after this lord finds a new outfit more to her liking. She would return the body, but not the original, whole DTN. Any vessel possessed by Huanlong would be corroded and branded by her unique mark of destruction. What she returned would be a corpse of ruin, altered beyond recognition. It might even be uncontrollable by its original owner." DTN seethed. His soul trembled with rage. He would not believe this creature's honeyed words. The invader had used his body, mimicked his aura and spirit power fluctuations perfectly. Even BG, closest to him and always meticulous, had detected nothing, believing the commands came from DTN with his full consent. Because of that deception, BG hadn't hesitated. She gathered almost all the core forces of the Stardew Great Forest and launched this unprecedented, terrifying beast tide against Shrek City. The Emerald Swan BG, the demon-eyed demon tree Wan Yao Wang, the dark golden dreadclaw bear Xiang Jun, the three-headed scarlet mastiff Qi Wang, the hell demon dragon King Ziji, and even the mysterious demon spirit, along with DTN, now manipulated by Huanlong, all 7 vicious beasts had nearly come forth. Under their command were even more than a dozen 100,000-year spirit beasts. This power, even if the dragon god Douluo Muen at his peak were still alive, would be hard to resist head-on. Shrek Academy was facing an existential threat, but the spirit beasts would not emerge unscathed either. After such a battle, who knew how many of their strongest clansmen would bleed to death? Their high-end power might be crushed for tens of thousands of years. DTN felt as if his lungs would burst with fury. His soul bled, and yet he was powerless, only able to watch events unfold. In his own mental sea, he was crushed by Huanlong, helpless as a lamb on a butcher's block. Huanlong laughed, a soft sound like wind chimes. She savored DTN's futile struggles and took perverse pleasure in his despair. She didn't think much of this black dragon body, but with some modification and empowerment, it could be turned into a doomsday beast shaped to her aesthetic of annihilation, perhaps even able to reach this world's true god rank. Then it would be a formidable advanced weapon. She fanned herself gently, her gaze piercing clouds straight to the city, about to receive the first wave of the beast tide, Shrek City, where the curve of her smile turned cruel and expectant. The show was only beginning. Despair would be the most beautiful overture. The earthquake the beast tide generated rolled toward Shrek City like a dull war drum beating from the earth's core. The ground trembled, the city walls hummed, and the very air seemed to harden. On the south city wall, the first to sense the movement was the city lord of Shrek City, Timame Dulo Shixing. He stood atop the 60-foot-high battlement, gaze like lightning sweeping to the southern horizon. "This is a beast tide?" Shixing's brows drew together. His voice was grave. "At this scale? How is this possible?" As Shrek City's highest authority, Shixing commanded tens of thousands of city defense troops and an elite corps of 3,000 spirit masters. He was also a pillar of the Sea God Pavilion and had seen countless battles, yet he had never seen anything like this. The forest in the distance seemed crushed by an invisible fist. A dense, black horde surged like a tide. Ancient trees toppled in its wake, dust mushroomed into the sky, forming a haze that blocked the sun. Piercing alarm bells tore through the air, mournful horns that rang over the 3 city defenses and throughout Shrek City. The alarm was carved into the bones of every resident, a collective memory of war. As humanity's first line against the Stardew Great Forest, the city knew exactly what a beast tide meant, a clash of steel and fang, a sifting of life and death. After each such tide, city walls had been stacked with the dead, moats stained with blood, and even titled Douluo had fallen here. Still, Shrek City did not descend into chaos. The streets emptied in an orderly fashion. Pedestrians slipped into shelters, shopkeepers lowered reinforced gates, mothers tucked children into underground bunkers, worried but composed. 10,000 years of victories had built the Academy's prestige. No beast tide in history had breached Shrek City's defenses. That ingrained faith let the city defense focus wholly on preparing for war, without worrying about internal disorder. The southern sky darkened with flying spirit beasts that formed a terrifying formation, a moving blackout rushing toward the wall at alarming speed. The air stank with the fumy, gamey scent of beasts and violent spirit power fluctuations. The oppression was almost physical, making breathing difficult. On the wall, the defense forces raced to complete preparations. First spirit tool cannon array charged, defense barrier at 70% strength. Sniper spirit master team in position. Commands, footsteps, and the clank of machinery braided into a tense symphony. Defensive spirit tools, inscribed with complex runes, activated. Pale blue energy shields unfolded in layers above the walls like an inverted bowl. 328 long-range spirit cannons raised their muzzles in unison, their metallic barrels gleaming in the dim light, all aimed at the surging black tide. The soldiers manning them were elites, handpicked from thousands. Though the oppressive pressure from the south drained color from many faces and made some hands tremble, they gritted their teeth and followed orders. Fear was human, but to overcome it and stand on the wall against this charge, each deserved to be called a hero. The Shrek City Defense Army numbered just over 10,000, its 3,000 most elite all-spirit masters, mostly graduates of the Academy's outer court. Though they couldn't enter inner court advanced studies, many chose to remain and serve in the City Defense Army. The pay and treatment were generous. Ordinary soldiers earned 3 times the Imperial Army pay, spirit masters 5 times. They also gained access to Academy cultivation resources and occasional guidance from titled Douluo, opportunities coveted across the continent. Service in this army was both honor and stepping stone. 3 years here could make a recruit's resume shine and open doors in the empires, or provide promotions into Shrek City's core administration. Given Shrek City's autonomous scope and resources, maintaining a standing army of 10,000 was already at the limit. More would invite suspicion from the 3 great empires and stretch the Academy's resources too thin. The cost was immense, annually 300 gold coins per ordinary soldier and 8,000 per spirit master, almost 30% of the city's revenue. Atop the south wall, the last level 6 fixed-mount spirit cannon finished charging. Its 3-meter barrel glowed a dangerous red as runes lit in sequence. 3,000 spirit masters formed battle lines, colored spirit rings shining beneath their feet and rising like a dazzling ocean of light that turned the wall into daytime. Every general and soldier fixed their gaze southward. That black torrent was bearing down, and the tremors at their feet grew more violent. Within Shrek Academy, 7 red emergency flares streaked into the sky. Inner court disciples, led by instructors, assembled and shot like streaks of light toward the south wall. In the Academy's communications center, 12 large spirit tools ran at full speed to broadcast the highest distress signal to the Tianhun, Star Luo, and dueling empires. A beast tide wasn't just Shrek Academy's crisis, it threatened the survival of the entire human world. The Sun Moon Empire was deliberately omitted from the plea. Even if it wished to help, the other 3 empires would never allow troops to pass through their territory. The acrimony of the war 4,000 years ago could not be erased by a single beast tide. Since the Stardew Great Forest lay directly south of Shrek City, the south wall would be the main battlefield. Yet the other walls were far from idle. Outer court students, guided by their mentors, rushed to reinforce the east, west, and north walls. Most were only 15 or 16, still youthful, but trained to operate defensive spirit tools. Thanks to recent breakthroughs in spirit tool tech from Sea Abyss City and the spread of simulated training, even a 2-ring spirit master could wield considerable combat power with tools. Xixing pressed his hands to the cold obsidian parapet and stared out into the distance. Wind whipped his dark cloak and disordered a few strands of gray at his temples. The Team Douluo, known for steadiness, showed an unusual bitterness now. How many years had it been since Shrek City faced full-scale war? He thought back. During the past 2 city lords' century-long terms, there had been no crisis this severe. He'd been in office less than 10 years and already faced the largest beast tide he'd ever seen, perhaps larger than any recorded in history. Out on the horizon, the first 10,000-year scaled beast broke through dust, its grayish-green scales flashing metallic in the low light. Corrosive saliva dripped from its fangs, burning pits into the soil. More alarming were several huge presences within the black tide, forces clearly at the 100,000-year level. A breeze carried that foul, gamey scent of spirit beasts, mingled with rot and blood, making many young soldiers instinctively pinch their noses. Ji Yingying was a super Douluo above level 95, a top-tier powerhouse, and yet the sight of the tide left his throat dry. Despite their numbers, the beast force showed no chaos. Ground beasts formed three distinct echelons: defensive beasts at the front, agile flanks skirting the sides, and attack specialists in the center. Winged beasts above flew in a strict offensive formation, an army-like order that meant unified command by a highly intelligent mastermind. What had happened in the Stardew Great Forest to push them to tear up the treaty and mount an attack of this scale? In recent years, the forest had been unusually calm. No reports of 100,000-year beasts hunted, no huge conflicts. Centuries after the Benti sect incident, the forest had even signed a non-aggression pact with Shrek Academy. What drove them to this now? Ji Yingying's gaze cut through the surging ranks. Far behind the initial waves, he felt several terrifying auras faintly emanate, pressure like a mountain, pressing down on their souls. Even a level 95 Super Douluo felt suffocated. Vicious beasts have been mobilized. He whispered, swallowing hard. His fingers dug into the obsidian until the stone quietly crumbled. This is serious. He could not tell exactly how many vicious beasts had arrived, and could only pray the worst did not come true. If all 7 great vicious beasts had fully emerged, not even a gathering of the Sea God Pavilion elders might be able to resist. These beings equaled or surpassed human Super Douluo levels and could each destroy a city. A strange hush fell on the wall. Only the wind moaning through cannon barrels and the distant roar of the tide played a dirge across the skies and earth. Every soldier could hear their heart pounding, so loud it felt like it might burst free. The spirit beast army advanced in perfect order like a black tide. Their synchronized steps made the ground tremble. The dark cloud overhead spread as the void filled with their pressure. Spirit power distortions sliced sunlight into fragmented patches like a premonition of doom. It was psychological warfare, an effort to erode the defender's will before combat began. As the distance closed, the might of the tide became even more terrifying. Even these battle-hardened Spirit Master elites paled. Some swallowed unconsciously, hands clenched weapons so tight knuckles whitened. Ordinary soldiers, without spirit power, were short of breath and broke out in cold sweat. If not for muscle memory from years of drill, many would have already broken, dropped their weapons, and fled. Their psychological resilience alone set the Shrek City Defense Army far above ordinary forces on the Douluo Continent. This was not a wild pack of animals, but a spirit beast army of tens of thousands. The weakest had 100 years of cultivation, enough to contend with human spirit grandmasters. 1,000-year beasts were common. 10,000-year beasts were numerous. Without the 50-meter-high city wall and powerful spirit tool arrays, these ordinary human soldiers wouldn't even be qualified to stand here. After all, unempowered soldiers, even fully armed, might not be able to defeat a 100-year spirit beast. Chapter 332, Yan Shaoje's Determination. Ji Yingying drew a deep breath, and the force field of his time domain quietly unfolded around him, slightly insulating him from the crushing pressure. He turned to face the defenders and spoke, his voice like a great bell across the city wall. Soldiers, remember what we are fighting for. Behind us are our homes, our families, and the honor of Shrek. It is ours to protect. His words carried weight. The soldiers, who had been tense and anxious, straightened slowly. Fear in their eyes gave way to a hard, determined gleam. Just as the defenders' nerves were about to snap, streaks of brilliant light pierced the sky and struck the southern battlements like meteors. Spirit power surged outward in ripples, instantly cutting through the suffocating pressure. A man in white robes landed gracefully, Yan Shaoje, dean of the Spirit Soul Department, his outline crowned by the faint phantom of a bright phoenix. Close behind him were his wife, Kai Mayer, Xian Linner, dean of the Spirit Tool Department, and Vice Dean Qian Duoduo, Elder Lin, Elder Zhuang, Gong Changlong, and scores of other Sea God Pavilion elders. Apart from those who had traveled to the Sun Moon Empire, Nearly every member of the Sea God Pavilion still at the academy had been summoned. Behind them, more than 40 inner court disciples stood along the wall like drawn blades. These prodigies were at least Spirit Emperor level, their spirit power flaring, spirit rings glittering. Familiar faces were among them: Jinwu Holy Maiden Wu Ming, flames of golden light flickering around her, and several other outstanding youths who had competed in the Spirit Master Tournament 2 sessions ago. In an instant, Shrek Academy's full strength was mobilized. Even many underage outer court disciples had scrambled to the wall to operate the simpler defensive spirit tools. Damn it! Why now? Why would the Stardew Great Forest act like this? Yan Shaoji's gaze was fixed on the advancing beast tide, his face grim. He could not understand why the once peaceful Stardew Great Forest would suddenly launch an assault of this scale. Worse, several of the Academy's limit Douluo had been taken to the Sun Moon Empire by Elder Xuan to escort the team in the Spirit Master Tournament. Shrek Academy was at its weakest in nearly a century. The beast tide had struck at the worst possible moment. Hundreds of years of peace made us lax, Elder Lin murmured, watching the surging horde, her lined face full of worry. Perhaps we trusted those vicious beasts too easily. She had a strong premonition that Shrek Academy might be facing true crisis this time. Yan Shaoji forced himself to calm down. There was no time to trace the cause of the beast tide. The immediate problem was how to withstand over 100,000 spirit beasts. 100,000 spirit beasts were the equivalent of 100,000 spirit masters in numbers. If beasts were equipped with spirit tools and formations, humans might not be able to hold them. The last time a tide this large formed, it had required combined forces from Shrek Academy, the Body Sect, and reinforcements from the 3 great empires to push it back and negotiate a non-aggression pact with several major vicious beasts. Now the beasts had unilaterally torn up that pact and returned. The distress signal's gone out, but the response looks bleak, Kai Mayer said quickly, stepping close to Yan Shaoji. Her tone was heavy. The elites from the 3 empires are at the Sun Moon Empire for the Grand Tournament and the Holy Grail War. Reinforcements can't arrive fast. There's been no reply from the Body Sect either. The timing was unsettlingly precise. The Stardew Great Forest had clearly chosen the moment when human powers were most distracted. Yan Shaoji suspected there might be a hidden conspiracy behind this. Shrek City had many spirit tools, but it had lost the Body Sect's strong support, and its own top-end combat power had been halved. Dragon God Douluo Mu and had long since fallen. They could not tap the Golden Tree's origin power, and even the Sea God's light couldn't be fully awakened. Yan Shaoji racked his brains and found no easy solution. Could the city wall's spirit tools truly withstand such a cataclysm? All the Sea God Pavilion elders watched the tide of beasts, now pressing within a few kilometers. A heavy silence lay over the city, broken only by the humming of charging spirit tools. We can't just fight blindly, Yan Shaoji said, taking a deep breath. A flicker of resolve crossed his face. We have to find out what's happening. Negotiation was the only possible turning point. If they could learn why the Stardew Great Forest had launched this tide, there might be a chance to de-escalate. Vicious beasts were highly intelligent. They would not launch a slaughter on such a scale for no reason. If they could talk, there was hope. There, right there, the golden-eyed Black Dragon King, Yan Shaoji said, eyes cutting through the dark mass of beasts to the densest, blackest cloud. The pressure from that spot was suffocating, stronger even than the aura of his late teacher, Dragon God Douluo Muen, at his peak. Dark energy twisted space as if it were a solid thing, light bent strangely around it. A tide like this can only be led by Beast God Ditian, Yan Shaoji said, turning to the others. Prepare for battle. I'm going to try to parley. To face Ditian in person filled Yan Shaoji with ice-cold dread. As a level 96 Super Douluo, he knew better than most how terrifying Ditian was, a peerless existence near the continent's peak, a vicious beast that had lived for nearly 1,000,000 years. By rank, Yan Shaoji should not have addressed Ditian as an equal, but Shrek Academy had no leader now. The responsibility fell to him. Be careful. Kai Mayer gripped his arm, her eyes full of worry. If it goes wrong, retreat. Don't try to be a martyr. Don't die, Xian Liner added, her voice stiff but sincere. The dean of the Spirit Tool Department, once Yan Xiaojie's frequent antagonist, put aside old grievances in this moment. Even their previous animosity melted in the face of the danger. Yan Xiaojie looked at everyone, determination hardening his features. For the honor of Shrek, I must step forward. If it's the golden-eyed Black Dragon King who wants to break Shrek City, he'll have to go over my corpse first. This was not like the Snow Empress's attack before, which had targeted Huo Yuhao and left the Academy's foundations intact. Detian's approach with 100,000 beasts at his back meant one thing: annihilation. If negotiations failed, there would be no retreat, only total war. Yan Xiaojie spread his arms and cried out a clear phoenix call. Brilliant golden light burst from him and coalesced into a blazing phoenix of sacred flame. Its wingspan exceeded 10 meters. A scorching wind swept the battlements, and for a moment everyone felt a rush of heat. The golden phoenix rose like a little sun in the dim sky. Wherever it passed, dark clouds thinned and light returned, if only a little. The defenders on the walls looked up together, hope stirring in their chests. Everyone wanted, above all, to avoid fighting. "Beast God, please show yourself," Yan Xiaojie called, amplifying his voice with spirit power. The phoenix radiated the majesty of a super Douluo, its golden light striving to cut through the gloom. High above the dark clouds, the emerald swan spirit beast Biji shifted into human form, her emerald wings hanging to her waist. She looked down at the massive black dragon coiled in the clouds. As a healing-type spirit beast, Biji did not wish to start such a tide. She knew the suffering war would bring. Spirit beasts were already few, and such a slaughter would decimate their numbers further. But this was an order from their co-lord, the Silver Dragon King Gu Yuena, and no beast dared refuse. Even if Detian's command seemed odd, they would not bypass him to verify. Detian had led the spirit beast race for countless years and earned absolute trust. What Biji didn't know was that the Detian before her was not the same Detian she had trusted. The order to launch the beast tide had been forged. Huanlong had impersonated Detian and deceived the beasts with a web of lies. Only Detian himself had the right to contact Gu Yuena directly. The rest had no way to check the order's authenticity, and cultural trust in Detian was unshakable. The black dragon slowly lifted its head. A flavor of playfulness and mockery, unlike anything Detian would display, glinted in its golden eyes. Dark scales flashed with a metallic sheen in the dim light, and dangerous black energy danced across each scale. A cold arc of a smile curved at the dragon's maw as it watched the golden phoenix draw nearer. "Interesting," Huanlong, masked as Detian, murmured, her voice threaded with a taunting playfulness. "You dare come alone? That takes courage." The great dragon's tail swayed lazily, stirring the surrounding chi. High in the cloud-choked sky, a negotiation that would decide Shrek City's fate was about to begin. "You are Yan Xiaojie." A cold, emotionless voice sliced through the air like an ice-forged blade, cutting straight into everyone's souls. The instant it sounded, those on Shrek City's walls involuntarily shivered. Throats constricted and breathing grew hard. The city's defense soldiers trembled. Inner court disciples held their breath, hair rising on end. This was the unparalleled majesty of beast god Detian, a voice that alone made all living things quake. Even Yan Xiaojie's golden phoenix form halted in midair, the brilliant flames surrounding him dimmed by several degrees, flickering like a candle in the wind, as if they might be snuffed at any moment. He felt the power in that voice far beyond his comprehension, the gap between them like a firefly beside the full moon. Ink-black clouds churned violently, as if some world-destroying vicious beast that had slumbered for eons were rolling in its sleep. Dark, metallic scales, each as large as a millstone and pulsing with terrifying energy, flashed between the clouds. Every time one appeared, a mountain-like pressure bore down on Yan Xiaojie, making his soul tremble. "That's right, it is I." Yan suppressed the agitation that threatened to spill over and kept his tone deferential. "May I ask, beast god, why have you torn up a centuries-old covenant and launched such a vast beast tide?" Under another's roof, one must bow. Shrek Academy's finest combat strength had been spent, facing a vicious beast king like Detian, an apex existence on the continent. He had no choice but to show humility first, to preserve any sliver of hope. He understood all too well that a single wrong word could collapse this negotiation and throw Shrek City into a hell of blood and fire. Why? A hint of anger crept into the cold voice, as if countless years of grievance were erupting all at once. Humans have never stopped hunting spirit beasts. Over the years, our numbers have steadily plummeted. Our living space has been pushed back step by step. Now you ask me why? Yan fell silent. The conflict between humans and spirit beasts was deep-rooted. Hunting beasts for spirit rings was the foundation of the Spirit Master growth system. But he knew this could not be the real reason DTN had unleashed a beast tide. If hunting alone were the cause, the Stardew Great Forest would have erupted long ago, not waited until now. He steadied himself and answered sincerely. Your Excellency, we have been actively seeking solutions. The Sacred Mark system is now widely used. Spirit Masters no longer need to hunt spirit beasts for spirit rings. They can receive safer, more powerful Sacred Mark blessings. In recent years, the frequency of hunts has fallen dramatically, and the spirit beast's habitat has been improving. That cannot be your reason for breaking the alliance. Yan had listened carefully when dragon god Douluo Muon described DTN's temperament, far-sighted and measured. He could not imagine DTN risking all-out war unless something earth-shattering had occurred. Please, beast god, tell us the true reason. His voice carried the resolve of a desperate gambit. Even if Shrek City falls today, let us at least die knowing why. From above the clouds came a low, derisive sneer. Heh, what does it matter to you if I destroy you? The simple sentence detonated like thunder, loaded with chilling indifference. Emerald Swan Biji's delicate body trembled violently. She turned in disbelief to the black dragon beside her. In her hundreds of thousands of years' knowledge of DTN, this beast god, aloof and arrogant though he was, had always put the survival of the spirit beast race above all else. He would never speak of wanton destruction as a jest. This was not the DTN she knew. Doubt crawled through her like a vine. You! Yan's golden phoenix shuddered. Rage and humiliation flared within him while his face drained of color. DTN's attitude was clear. He did not care for reasons or consequences. He intended to destroy Shrek City. There was no room left for negotiation. Bastard, if you want war, then have it. At worst, we die. DTN's words, contemptuous of all life, were heard by everyone on the wall. Xianlinner's temper, already short, snapped. She slammed her hand against the battlement, and the hard obsidian shattered at the impact. Shrek Academy does not bow to cowards. Not only Xianlinner, but every soldier and spirit master on the wall bristled. To be treated as ants, to be casually crushed, stirred every fighting spirit in their bones. Swear to live and die with Shrek. One voice rose, then tens of thousands answered as one, an earth-shaking roar. The morale that had been cowed by DTN's oppressive presence flamed back to life. Destroying you, what does it matter if I destroy you? That bone-chilling sentence was like a poisoned thorn, piercing the heart of every Shrek person and stoking the pride and bloodlust long buried in their marrow. Yan Xiaojie's bright flames flickered out as he returned to human form and hovered in midair. He dropped the honorific. His voice, now laced with barely contained fury, carried across the battlefield. DTN, do you really want this? Shrek Academy may be at a temporary disadvantage, but we are not prey to be picked off at will. If you press the war, even if Shrek City falls, the spirit beasts of the Stardew Great Forest will pay a terrible price. He clung to one last hope. He could not believe DTN would truly choose mutual annihilation. From his knowledge of the beast god, DTN had always prioritized the continuation of his race. Humph! DTN snorted, a sound that shook the heavens. The roiling clouds split apart, and a titanic black dragon's head eased out of the fog. Its golden eyes blazed like twin suns, casting twin beams of solid light that locked onto Yan Xiaojie. The oppressive force rolled outward like a tsunami. Yan grunted, blood trickled from the corner of his mouth, and he stumbled back more than 10 meters in the air before steadying himself. Get lost. The dragon's golden eyes were cold as ice. Say another word, and you won't be going back. Yan met the vast, sky-blocking dragon head, and the last flicker of hesitation vanished from his eyes, replaced by resolute battle intent. He inhaled and vanished in a streak of light, returning to the city wall. His voice thundered over the field. Everyone, listen to my orders. Spirit tool cannons, prepare to fire. Shrek Academy fights to the death today. Do not retreat. The deadly silence on the wall shattered. Soldiers adjusted the angles of the spirit tool batteries. The grinding of gears and the hum of charging energy became a sharp mechanical chorus. Spirit masters released their spirit rings, yellow, purple, and black auras weaving together along the ramparts into a dazzling sea of light. Facing a terrifying beast god and hundreds of thousands of spirit beasts, a resolute flame burned in every pair of eyes. The war was about to erupt. Kill! Bathe Shrek City in blood! The black dragon head slammed down on the clouds, and its emotionless command thundered across the plain. Hundreds of thousands of spirit beasts answered with a wail to the sky. Wolf howls, tiger roars, dragon bellows, and the cries of countless beasts braided into a deafening wall of sound that made the earth itself tremble. In the next breath, their combined aura poured forward like a dreadful flood. They stamped, flapped, charged. With unstoppable force, they became a black tsunami, whipping up dust and a blood-scented wind. Wherever they passed, grass and trees splintered, earth cracked, and despair settled over Shrek City like a tangible dark cloud. Boom! The south wall's spirit tool battery, long primed, broke the silence first. 72 heavy muzzles flared with scorching red light. Crimson torrents of energy, like the breath of a titanic dragon, ripped through the air with a shrill whistle and a deafening roar, striking the vanguard of the beast tide several kilometers away. Like divine retribution, the beams hit square in the midst of the spirit beast ranks. Conflagrations devoured swathes of creatures in an instant. Screams and the smell of burning flesh drifted back toward the walls. Those struck directly were vaporized. The less fortunate were charred black, collapsing and leaving a gap nearly 100 meters wide in the onrush. But the gap lasted only a moment. Beasts from behind trampled their scorched companions, eyes flashing with frenzied red light. Pain and death meant nothing. Only the cold command mattered, and they surged forward, pressing the attack. Their hooves and claws ground blood and torn flesh into the soil, turning the ground into a muddy crimson mire. All spirit masters, listen to me. Release area effect spirit abilities to slow the beast tide. Duo stood on the highest command platform, gripping a spirit tool megaphone etched with complex runes. His face was grave, but his voice rang clear and commanding. First Legion, hold the left flank. Second Legion, suppress the right. The center is mine. As Dean of Shrek Academy's Spirit Tool Department, he knew how to coordinate artillery and spirit abilities. At his command, 3,000 spirit masters along the wall unleashed their powers in unison. Colored lights braided together in midair, forming a dazzling, lethal net. Hailstones, sheets of fire, lightning storms, and razor wind blades pelted the approaching mass like a torrential barrage, while ordinary soldiers fired portable spirit tools in coordinated volleys. The Great War had truly begun. End of chapter. On the southern wall of Shrek City, spirit tool shells screamed through the air toward the beast tide, and spirit tool beams, silver as lightning, struck the spirit beast's vital points with deadly precision. For a time, the sky and earth were filled with the light of spirit abilities and spirit tools. Roars, explosions, the pained cries of beasts, and the shouts of soldiers wove together into a cruel, tragic symphony of war. Charge! Yan Xiaozhe roared. Golden light surged around him as he transformed again into the bright phoenix, wings spanning over 100 meters as he rose into the sky. 9 spirit rings lit in sequence around the phoenix, and with a violent beat of his wings, countless feathers burning with holy flame fell like meteors. Those fires were unbearably hot. Where they touched a spirit beast, they tore through flesh and spirit until even a 10,000-year-old beast could be reduced to ash within breaths. Following Yan Xiaozhe, Xianliner, Kai Meier, and other powerhouses struck. Xianliner released her Azure Flame Dragon spirit, clad in azure fire. In her spirit avatar, she became a vast azure flame dragon, and each sweep of her wings sent storms of blue inferno that turned everything in their path to charcoal. Kai Meier wielded the evil-breaking dragon spirit spear. Its razor-sharp aura cut through the beast horde, each swing sending showers of blood. Her movements were elegant but deadly, a dance of death on the battlefield. Even the usually mild Elder Zhuang unleashed his ancient life tree spirit. Thick vines burst from the ground to bind and choke the charging beasts. Elder Lin charged straight into the horde. With each palm strike, gale force winds shredded the creatures. their bodies reduced to fine black ash. The southern wall had become a meat grinder. Spirit beasts fell by the minute. Presumptuous! The beasts would not tolerate titled Douluo slaughtering their kin without retaliation. A thunderous roar exploded through the tide. From the mass, a dark gold dreadclaw bear burst forth. Over 30 meters tall, fur glinting like metal in the dim light, golden claws flashing with a lethal sheen. This was Bear Lord, 6th of the 10 great vicious beasts. He brandished his claws, rending blades that could tear mountains, and 5 golden claw auras, like blades shredding the sky, cut across thousands of meters to strike at Yan Xiaojie's bright phoenix form. Yan Xiaojie's pupils tightened. He beat his wings to dodge, but one claw aura nicked his left wing. Golden feathers scattered, the holy flame dimmed several shades, and blood spurted from the corner of his mouth. His body wavered mid-air before he steadied himself. The earth shook. Thick, serpent-like roots burst up from the ground, covered in dark green scales and tipped with spear-like points, lashing toward Shan Linner, Kai Mayer, and the others. Where they passed, the ground split open. The demon-eyed demon tree, Myriad Demon King, had awakened. As a plant-type vicious beast ranked 5th, he could command all vegetation for kilometers, turning the battlefield into his domain. A scorching column of flame, more than 10 meters in diameter, shot up from the beast tide, melting rock into seething magma and hurtling for the city wall. The pillar slammed into the light blue energy shield generated by a spirit tool with an ear-splitting roar. The shield flickered and rippled, its surface flashing erratically, threatening to fracture. The attacker was a 3-headed crimson mastiff, Crimson King, 8th of the 10 great vicious beasts, an ancient 200,000-year power whose strikes could rend heaven and earth. Further back, a purplish-black mass formed a vortex in midair. Spirit tool shells and beams fired from Shrek City vanished when they neared it. Beneath the vortex, a demonic dragon, scales the color of bruised night, beat massive wings with cold, merciless eyes. She exuded an aura of darkness and dead stillness. Ziji, the Hell Demon Dragon King, 9th of the 10 great vicious beasts. Her dark attributes swallowed energy attacks, making her the bane of light-type spirit abilities. At the rear of the beast tide, a verdant radiance like a curtain of spring rain descended from the sky, bathing the injured beasts. Charred fur smoothed, deep wounds knit before onlookers' eyes, and the aura of each beast swelled by more than 30%. Speed and strength rose as if by miracle. The source was BG, emerald hair flowing, enormous emerald wings spread, hands clasped at her chest. Regret and sorrow shaded her eyes, but she poured out healing and amplification without cease. Though only 4th of the 10 great vicious beasts in terms of direct combat, her restorative and support power was unmatched across the Douluo Continent. With her backing, the beast tide's assault grew all the more ferocious and hard to halt. Boom, boom. Explosions and energy detonations never ceased. Outside the city wall, the land had long since become a field of blood. Spirit beasts were torn apart by spirit tool fire and shattered into fragments, yet the tide never paused. Yellow and purple spirit rings drifted like autumn leaves over the battlefield, among them many black rings, the last traces of dead 10,000-year-old beasts. Shrek City made full use of spirit tools, its dense firepower like a steel barrier holding most beasts back 100 meters from the walls. Many creatures never even saw the city before a spirit tool beam took them down, or a shell carved them to pieces, leaving nothing but a bloody pool in the blast's wake. Still the tide pressed on. More beasts stepped over still warm bodies of their kin and hurled themselves at the seemingly fragile yet unyielding energy shield. Their eyes were wild, red with frenzy, utterly indifferent to their own losses, overcome by their animal nature. Yan Xiaojie watched the surging tide below, then glanced toward the black dragon coiled in the clouds that had yet to truly move. Unease tightened his chest. The coordinated might of BG, Bear Lord, Myriad Demon King, and the rest was already pushing them to the limit. If Beast God DTN himself entered the fray, who among Shrek Academy could stop him? The verdant healing light continued to fall like ceaseless rain. Beasts felled by spirit tool cannons would rise again within breaths, wounds closing and eyes once more blazing with fanatic charge toward the city. Humans have actually reached this level? BG hovered amid the air, watching Shrek City's overwhelming hail of shells and silver rays. Countless beasts were shredded before reaching 100 meters of the wall. Shock cooled her emerald gaze into a hardening expression. From the start, she had opposed launching the Beast Tide. Every large-scale battle weakened the already strained Spirit Beast clan, draining its foundations. But Ditian had issued the order in the name of Lord, and no Spirit Beast in the Stardew Great Forest had the right to disobey. Still, the power of these cold metal creations from Shrek City erased any remnants of resistance inside her. For years, the spirit beasts had retracted into the Great Forest. Their knowledge of the wider world had fallen behind. She had once believed that only spirit masters with powerful spirits and abilities posed a real threat to them. Now she realized that ordinary humans, without cultivation at all, could threaten the clan simply by wielding enough spirit tools. Those cold metal devices required neither talent nor cultivation, just a trigger, and a spirit beast's life could be taken. The realization pierced BG's pacifist heart. If human civilization kept accelerating, taking land and resources, the spirit beast's living space would shrink until they faced extinction. Better to seize the moment and fight while they still had strength than wait for oblivion. Grief tightened her chest, but her healing radiance burned even brighter. For the clan's future, there was no other choice. Humph. Above the clouds, the black dragon that blotted out sun and sky slowly spread enormous wings. Each scale was like carved black jade, glittering coldly in the dim light. The hurricane from those unfurling wings swept dust away, revealing a scarred and ruined land below. The dragon raised a foreclaw and, with a gentle rip of 5 sharp talons, tore open the void realm with a pitch-black fissure that looked at once delicate and terrifying. Surrounding dark elements convulsed and boiled, drawn to the claw as if summoned, congealing into an oppressive, suffocating energy. That fluctuation in power snapped the attention of every titled Douluo below. A shadow fell over their hearts. End of chapter. Chapter 335. Emperor Tian takes action. Is it coming? Yan Xiaojie looked up at the roiling dark energy climbing through the sky. A light-devouring tide, and a trace of bitter resolve crossed his face. He had known for a long time that Ditian would not hold back forever. Once the beast god commanding the Stardew Great Forest made a move, it would be devastating, like shattering mountains and collapsing nations. But there was nowhere to retreat to. Behind them lay Shrek City and millions of civilians who trusted and relied on them. Even if death awaited, they had to step forward and take the blow. As the black energy swelled, the celestial phenomena above the battlefield twisted into something terrifying. The dense clouds that had merely dimmed the sky darkened into a viscous black, as if smeared with ink. Countless thick purple bolts of lightning writhed and exploded within them, electric serpents dancing wildly, painting the heavens with flickering light as if the world were ending. Then a monstrous dragon claw, over 100 meters across, slowly extended from the churning sea of ink-like clouds. The claw had condensed from the purest origin dark elements. Its surface was shrouded in a corrosive black mist that ate at space itself. Each talon was a black crystal diamond tempered by heaven and earth, emitting a chilling gleam that made one's soul tremble. Wherever the claw passed, space warped and quivered with supreme destructive power. It slammed down toward the titled Douluos led by Yan Xiaojie. Caw! A clear, resolute phoenix cry cut through the sky. Yan Xiaojie did not hesitate. Golden light erupted from his body as he released the spirit true body of the bright phoenix. A brilliant golden phoenix, wings spanning over 100 meters, erupted above the battlefield. Every feather burned with an unquenchable holy fire, like a golden sun ascending from the earth, scorching and purifying. It plunged fearlessly into the dark dragon claw descending from the clouds. Boom! Light and darkness collided with incomparable ferocity. The blinding radiance of the phoenix burst against the crushing black talon, and the two extremes, pure burning light and primeval darkness, tangled and annihilated one another in midair, sending shockwaves rippling outward like a world-ending tsunami. The surging tide of spirit beasts below and the defenders on the city walls felt as if an invisible hammer had struck them. Weaker cultivators coughed up blood and crumpled to the ground. Yet the power gap between Yan Xiaojie and Ditian was immense. After only a few breaths of stalemate, The dark dragon claw crushed the golden sun in its palm like a fragile glass globe. The bright phoenix cried out mournfully, its holy fire dimmed visibly, its brilliant golden feathers disintegrating inch by inch into drifting light particles that vanished. Xiaoze! Chimere's heart lurched with fear as she cried out. A cold, mocking sneer echoed from within the clouds, mocking Yanji's audacity in thinking he could stand against such power. Caw! Just as despair spread, another phoenix cry erupted, raw, defiant, almost like a blood-curdling shriek. In the golden rain that was about to dissipate, a faint flame flared back to life in the void realm. The spark grew, and in an instant, Yan Xiaoje's figure reformed. Though obviously weakened and still bleeding at the mouth, he had not died. He had used his ultimate life-saving trump card, Phoenix Nirvana. As a top-tier beast spirit, he could be reborn from ashes once when on the brink of death, an extra life. But the cost was tremendous, and it could not be used again soon. Forced to spend it in this fight, he had barely withstood Ditian's fatal blow and bought Shrek City a precious moment. Oh? A soft exclamation of surprise came from the clouds. Huanlong, who had been manipulating everything, hadn't expected a human to possess such a peculiar last resort. The surprise, however, hardened instantly into cold, killing intent. In the next breath, the sky-obscuring dragon claw slammed down again, even more violent and ruthless than before, intent on wiping out Yan Xiaoje and the Shrek City wall beneath him. Let's go! Team Douluo Shixing and Elder Lin, a level 97 Super Douluo, exchanged a glance and shouted in unison. Two immense auras shot into the sky as each released their spirit true body, becoming streaks of light that met the descending claw head-on. Yan Xiaoje poured what remained of his spirit power into rekindling his golden flames, fainter but still burning, and met the attack alongside the two elders. He knew he alone could never stop Ditian. Even with Shixing and Elder Lin, both super duos, they might only delay the inevitable for a short time. Xianliner, Chimere, and others were embroiled in fierce struggles with vicious beasts like Xiangjun and the myriad Monster King, and could not break free to provide support. Shrek City had fallen into its most desperate, perilous moment since it had been founded 10,000 years ago. Should we help? On the high terrace of the Jade Chamber, in the center of Shrek City, Ganyu looked toward the distant battlefield, where energies flared and killing intent soared. Her gaze fixed on the thickest area of cloud and pressure. The beautiful longbow in her hand had silently formed an ice-blue arrow, extreme cold chi spiraling around the shaft, moisture in the air condensed into fine ice crystals. If Ningguang nodded, Ganyu could loose the arrow, and its searing cold might at least blunt Ditian's offensive and buy Shrek Academy more time. Ningguang stood with her arms crossed, the hem of her gold-patterned cheongsam stirring in the wind. But her eyes were not on the battlefield. They were on the rooftops to the north of Shrek City. There, crowds of ordinary people, carrying the old and little ones, filed out like migrating ants along evacuation routes the Academy had prepared. The Academy's leaders had anticipated escalation and had been arranging civilian transfers from the outset of the beast tide. But ordinary people could only move so fast. It would take time for them to clear the danger zone and reach safety. Ningguang fell silent for a moment, her expression shifted subtly. Finally she spoke, her voice carrying a faint, solemn weight. Let's try a long-range strike first. More importantly, whatever's in those clouds is probably not the true beast god Ditian. Ningguang had already received an urgent report from Lu Jingming through special channels. The mastermind behind the sudden beast tide was a destructive terror, Lord of Destruction Huanlong. The awe-inspiring Ditian before them was only a powerful puppet controlled by Huanlong. Confronting Huanlong directly with their current strength would be hopeless. Lu Jingming's plan was clear: gather the forces and evacuate quickly. The Black Tower would pick them up across space with the Thousand Worlds One vehicle and ferry them safely back to Sea Abyss City. Ningguang's gaze slid back from the evacuating masses to the battlefield, where battle cries shook the heavens. Her eyes sharpened. Both our Jade Chamber staff and those evacuating civilians need more time. Across Shrek City, Jade Chamber employees in uniform emerged in orderly fashion from branch offices and converged on the main building according to the emergency plan. mostly staff who maintained the chamber's sprawling commercial networks. Not combatants, but indispensable. Ningguang watched them funnel toward headquarters, her expression resolute. She had to get every single one of them to safety. That was an inescapable responsibility. At the same time, seeing the faltering steps of the overall evacuation in the north made her unable to harden herself and depart immediately. Every second they could buy might save dozens or even hundreds of lives. Ganyu nodded. She steadied the bow and drew the ice-blue arrow to her cheek. Her spirit power gathered into the tip like a vortex, and the air around the arrow grew numb with cold. The extreme chill concentrated at the point, yet ingeniously, not a sliver leaked. Ganyu compressed it all precisely within the ice-blue shaft. The energy was so dense the air around the arrow distorted, as if it could not bear the impending cataclysmic cold about to erupt. This was the embodiment of an ice-type spirit master's ultimate control and Ganyu's absolute confidence as a level 99 limit Douluo. Even though the Jade Chamber sat over 10 kilometers from the main battlefield, her exquisite power control and sharp spatial perception ensured the arrow, charged with extreme cold, would hit the target hidden in the dark clouds. As she charged, the ice-blue light at the arrowhead deepened, contained and terrible, as if it condensed the chill of an entire frozen ocean into a single point. The surrounding air temperature plummeted, and layers of fine ice crystals, like delicate crystal filigree, formed on the white jade railings of the terrace. Free moisture in the air froze into thousands of tiny ice particles that refracted a faint azure light and hung suspended around Ganyu like stardust. She looked like an ice and snow goddess. Ningguang's eyes showed admiration. Ganyu was not merely a non-combatant secretary, though she was flawless in that role. She was exceptionally capable in battle as well. End of this chapter. Chapter 336, Ganyu's Power. On the top floor of the Jade Chamber, Ganyu held her breath. She had compressed the arrow's cold to the exact point she could control. A sharp, ice-edged glint flashed in her calm, aquamarine eyes. She adjusted her breathing ever so slightly, her fingers, slender and flawless as white jade, steady as stone, and then she released the taut bowstring. Whoosh! There was no earth-shattering explosion, only the faint, clear hiss of something slicing through the air. The ice-blue arrow vanished from the string, and in the next instant became an ethereal azure meteor tearing across the sky. It left a super-cold trail that shimmered and blurred, almost impossible to follow with the naked eye. With impossible speed, it ignored distance and drove straight for the colossal dragon silhouette, barely visible in the distant storm clouds. Wherever it passed, the moisture in the air froze instantly, leaving a momentary thread of ice crystals that the shock of energy immediately shattered into powder. Ganyu lowered the longbow in her hand, its surface glowing like moonlight. Her eyes tracked the streak of ice-blue light. This shot had condensed over 70% of her pure spirit power and had been compressed and refined for several minutes. The destructive cold lodged in it could freeze 1,000 miles of mountains and rivers and still halt raging torrents. Had the true beast god Detian been struck directly without defense, even with his dragon clan physique and cultivation, he would likely have suffered grievous injuries, perhaps fatal. Ganyu was now a level 99 limit Douluo, who had mastered the ultimate law of ice and frost. Her power had reached the peak of this world. Even Detian at full strength might not guarantee victory against her in a head-on clash. But Ganyu's mind was clear. The rampaging Detian before her was not the real Detian at all. Behind that form hovered something far more terrifying, the Lord of Destruction, Huanlong. Huanlong's true strength was unfathomable and far exceeded Detian's. That was precisely why Lu Jingming had urged retreat. Ningguang, standing nearby, understood this as well. Shrek Academy, as a symbol of traditional spirit master power, could one day stand as an obstacle to Sea Abyss City. Her intervention now was out of compassion for the countless panicked civilians and out of respect for life, not for any favor toward Shrek. Above the clouds, where Huanlong toyed with Yan Xiaozhe, Shixing, and Elder Lin like a cat with mice, her enormous golden dragon eyes suddenly narrowed. A bone-deep, life-threatening crisis washed over her, enough to imperil this black dragon body. Though the black dragon she controlled bore immense power and awe-inspiring divine might, Under Ganyu's ultra-long-range, pinpoint strike, it had become the single most obvious target. The ice-blue meteor disregarded space and struck in an instant. The extreme cold it carried, cold enough to freeze even the origin of the soul, forced Huanlong to drop her playful demeanor and respond with everything she had. Dragon God Claw. Huanlong did not hesitate. Calling on power and efficiency far beyond what Ditian's true self could muster, she forcibly drew forth the deepest traces of the dragon god's power hidden in the black dragon form. The darkly coiled dragon claw, once shrouded in black chi, erupted with dazzling golden divine force. In her huge golden eyes, multicolored flames ignited. A dragon god pressure, primordial and towering above all life, unleashed itself with a roar that swept the world. This was Ditian's greatest trump card, the Dragon God Claw, one reason he ranked among the top 10 vicious beasts. If Ditian himself had used it, it would be formidable yet bounded by his cultivation and compatibility with the Dragon God's power. But Huanlong controlled this body now, and her command over law and energy far exceeded Ditian's. Under her will, the Dragon God Claw was elevated to a terrifying new level. The Golden Claw, radiating majestic divine might, tore through the void with an aura that crushed law and shattered all things. It reached out and precisely seized the incoming ice-blue meteor. Crack! The violent collision broke the compression that had contained the arrow's cold. Like a 10,000-year glacier rupturing its dam, like a slumbering ice ocean awakening, the built-up cold exploded outward in a destructive tsunami of ice. Centered on the impact, the space for hundreds of meters crystallized into a massive, perfectly clear block of ice. The churning dark clouds froze mid-rip, holding their ferocious shapes an instant longer. The purple lightning that had flashed and roared within them solidified into countless eerie, brilliant purple lightning ice sculptures. Then an unimaginable downpour of cold poured outward. Fist-sized hail pummeled down like divine punishment, and a blizzard capable of freezing everything materialized and thundered outward like a roaring white giant, sweeping from Shrek City across the surrounding hundreds of miles. On the city walls, soldiers of the Shrek City Defense Force shivered despite their spirit tool shields. Their teeth chattered and spirit tools grew numb in their hands, nearly slipping free. The spirit beast hordes below were battered indiscriminately. Countless beasts wailed as they were frozen mid-stride into lifelike ice sculptures, arrested in running or leaping poses. The whole battlefield felt as if time itself had been forced to pause, plunged into a silent, frozen world. Ditian, Biji's emerald eyes constricted. Blood drained from her face. She stared at the frozen giant with a mingled expression of shock and terror. She could feel that the enormous life aura within the black dragon had not dissipated. It had been utterly suppressed and frozen by an incomprehensibly deep cold rooted in law. That colossal body, like a mountain together with the surrounding cloudscape, now lay sealed in ancient ice, helpless and immobile. What powerful expert has come to our aid? Yan Xiaozhe, Shixing, and Elder Lin froze in midair, disbelief on their faces. They had seen the ice-blue meteor come from the direction of Shrek City's center and had watched as it froze the dragon god Ditian with a single strike, an act of strength that likely surpassed ordinary demigod levels. Protect Ditian! Biji was the first to recover. Her anxious shout rolled across the battlefield, trembling. She knew all too well that if Ditian, the commander and soul of the beast tide, stayed frozen too long, the tide would lose unified command and break into chaotic individual fights. The initiative of the war would swing back to the humans. Her emerald wings beat furiously. She gathered every ounce of healing and life energy into a dense, towering pillar of life light and launched it like a bridge across the sky toward the frozen black dragon, attempting to dispel the terrible cold with overwhelming vitality. Roar! Sky-rending claw! Almost at the same moment, the enormous dark golden dreadclaw bear, Xiangjun, bellowed in furious defiance. He abandoned his tussle with Kai Mayer and raised his twin claws, harder than refined gold. The ultimate power of the dark golden dreadclaw bear clan condensed at his fingertips into 5 immense golden claw lights that seemed capable of tearing the heavens and rending the earth. This was his clan's innate unique skill, and one of the few attacks that could break Ditian's dragon scales and wound his physical body. It was also Xiangjun's chief weapon in dominating the Stardo Great Forest. Seeing Ditian frozen and everyone's attention diverted, Xiangjun seized the chance to strike at his most irritating foe, martial god Douluo Qianliner, who had been harrying him with her unparalleled speed. Though she had not caused great injury, she had long since irked the irascible bear. Without hesitation, Xiangjun fired his golden claw light across space at her with ruthless intent. "Liner, watch out!" Qian Duoduo, the Oolong Douluo, who had been monitoring the battle, felt his face contort as fear burst into his voice. He knew the terrifying force behind Xiangjun's enraged strike. Qian Liner's attacks were swift and lethal, but her defenses were not at the top among titled Douluo. She could not stand against this sky-rending claw head-on. Instinct beat thought. Qian Duoduo flung a level 8 peak defensive spirit tool from his storage, the light of spatial protection, that he had spent years and countless rare materials to forge. A brilliant silver spatial shield unfolded like a vast energy bubble, rippling with spatial currents, and enveloped Qianliner just in time. This was Qian Duoduo's strongest instantaneous defense, capable of withstanding the full force of most Super Douluo. However, rip, the golden claw light, saturated with Xiangjun's furious might, and the law of tearing, sliced through the seemingly solid silver spatial shield like a hot knife through butter, shredding it into countless shimmering fragments. Chapter 337, Qian Duoduo and Qianliner. The dark golden claw light formed by the sky-ripping claw tore through the silver spatial shield with almost no resistance. It carried a crushing, despair-inducing might and reached straight for Qianliner's vital heart. Black Dragon Shield True Body! Qian Duoduo's eyes were bloodshot. His roar was equal parts panic and resolve. He activated the precious ring on his finger without hesitation, a short-range teleportation spirit tool etched with spatial runes. A pale blue light flickered, and Qian Duoduo vanished from where he stood, reappearing in the next instant directly in front of Qianliner. His spirit, the Black Dragon Shield, erupted in a dark brilliance and expanded suddenly into a tens of meters high metal shield, its surface carved with ancient dragon patterns and heavy as a mountain. The shield transformed into his spirit true body, a massive bulwark that enveloped him and Qianliner. Dark light flowed across it, and the dragon motifs seemed to come alive with low roars. Clang! A deafening metallic crash split the sky, sharp enough to make the surrounding spirit masters clamp their hands over their ears as their spirit circulation faltered. The golden claw light and the colossal black dragon shield met with thunderous force. An invisible shockwave rippled outward, tearing the ground beneath them into a chasm several meters deep. Even the distant city wall's battlements trembled and crumbled under the impact. Ugh! Qian Duoduo slammed his arms against the shield's back, as if bracing to hold it in place. His feet sank into the soil like stakes, his whole skeleton groaning beneath the unbearable load. His arm muscles shook violently, veins standing out like coiling dragons, his face drained of color. He could feel the sky-ripping claw's power through the shield, an oppressive mountain-weight force that threatened to crush him. A chilling creak began from the shield's once invulnerable surface as fine spiderweb cracks spread outward from the point of impact. Crack! Crack! The metallic splitting sounded clearly to everyone. The fissures multiplied and deepened. The dark light of the shield dimmed as if it might shatter completely in the next breath. Pfft! Qian Duoduo spat up a mouthful of hot blood. For his spirit true body to be so severely damaged meant a brutal backlash to his soul. Still, his eyes never left the front. Knees bent to the limit, he planted himself there, trembling and bleeding, using his nearly demolished spirit to keep Qianliner safe. He knew better than anyone. Once he fell, the person behind him would be fully exposed to Xiangjun's claws, the kind that tear everything apart. From Xiangjun's sudden strike to Qian Duoduo teleporting and manifesting his spirit true body in front of Qianliner, it had all happened faster than most minds could follow. Duoduo! Warm blood splattered across her cheek and snapped Qianliner out of shock. She watched the broad, wavering back in front of her, spitting blood but still holding firm, and rage and anguish flooded her. Without hesitation, she channeled her spirit into the long spear in her hand. Her spirit, Green Flame Dragon, was actually a mutated wind attribute spirit, When wind power is compressed to extremes, it creates fierce friction with the air and manifests as green flame. A violent hurricane formed, a sharp howl tearing through the battlefield as compressed wind power erupted into constantly flickering green fire. Though not as overwhelmingly destructive as Lu Jingming's decaying black abyssal blossom, this green flame still carried an aspect of decomposition. Anything it touched would be torn apart and dissolved to basic particles by the wind flame's force. Green flame, flood dragon break. With a soft cry, Xianliner hurled the spear, wrapped in concentrated green flame, at the towering, dark, golden bear. The spear seemed to take on a life of its own. The flame surged and rippled, forming into a roaring flood dragon of fire. Where the flood dragon passed, the ground split and seared, leaving behind a scorched chasm. Low-level spirit beasts grazed by the residual flame were incinerated mid-scream, bursting into green fire and turning to ash. But at that critical moment, rumble, the earth convulsed. Broken rock and soil exploded upward like a geyser, and countless ancient trunks, greenish-black and grotesquely thick, burst from the ground like tentacles of hell, twisted, gnarled, covered in wrinkled bark and coiled with dark green vines that gave off a foul stench. Those eerie roots intertwined and fused with unnatural speed, condensing into a greenish-black wooden giant over 30 meters tall, radiating malice. Its torso was a brutal braid of massive trunks. Its limbs were like the knotted arms of ancient trees. Hundreds of blood-red, evil eyes opened across its head and torso, each rotating independently and all locking onto Xianliner and her flood dragon spear. This was the demon-eyed demon tree, ranked 5th among the 10 great vicious beasts, the 10,000 Demons King. A master of plant control and concealment, it had been hiding until Xianliner's decisive strike forced it out. Now it spread its enormous right arm, which was woven from dozens of venomous, snake-like vines. In the palm sat a basketball-sized blood-red eye radiating intense mental fluctuations. With a howling wind, the giant hand slapped toward the flood dragon, aiming to snuff out any human counterattack and deny Duo and Xianliner a breath of hope. Humans, today is your doomsday. Feel the burning of hell's fires. Almost at the same time, the three-headed crimson demon mastiff, the Crimson King, bellowed, its 3 savage heads fixed on the most concentrated clusters of defenders on the city wall and opened wide. 3 pillars of crimson hellfire, hot enough to melt refined gold, spat forth. The flames converged into a single, even larger golden pillar that shot toward the city wall. The air warped in concentric heat ripples. Wherever the pillar passed, sulfur and the stench of charred flesh lingered. The heat alone made soldiers on the wall feel their skins sting. Xiangjun, his face a mask of feral fur and cruel contempt, ignored the flood dragon entirely. He trusted the 10,000 Demons King's power absolutely. All he wanted was to utterly crush this troublesome titled Douluo and the shield that had interfered with him. Raising his dark golden claw again, he gathered a more violent, more concentrated tearing energy than before. The air itself screamed as the spatial fabric was rent by the claw's edge. A tens of meters long, dark, golden, destructive claw light, sharp as a reaper's scythe, ripped through the atmosphere and slashed toward Duo's black dragon shield, already riddled with cracks and dimming. Pfft! Duo's body convulsed. He vomited more blood, some mixed with fragments of his internal organs. The color drained from his face. Pouring his last reserves of spirit into the nearly shattered shield, he made a desperate final stand. But against Xiangjun's fury, the shield that had accompanied him through a lifetime and countless battles was as fragile as glass. Crack! Boom! The sound of shattering echoed across the battlefield. The black dragon shield could not withstand the destructive force and exploded into countless metal shards, scattering in dim dark light. The claw light, unhindered, drove forward like a red-hot brand through thin ice and pierced Duo's chest where no protection remained. The dark golden claw light still carried its full destructive momentum and surged on, aiming straight for Shrek City's massive defensive wall. Rumble. A deafening roar, like the collapse of heaven and earth, erupted and engulfed the entire battlefield. End of chapter. Against the terrifying force of the Tear Sky Claw, the thick protective shield on the city wall shattered like glass struck by a hammer, hairline cracks spreading instantly until, Amid a blinding flash, it exploded into a spray of glittering light. With the shield gone, the section of the south wall built from massive stones could not withstand the residual force. With a grinding groan, its brick and stone structure disintegrated and collapsed. Countless huge chunks of rubble and clouds of dust were thrown into the air, then rained down. When the smoke finally cleared, a gaping wound in the wall remained, several meters deep and shaped like a giant bear's claw. Through that breach, the chaos inside the city was visible. Defenders cried out in terror. Many who could not dodge in time were buried or crushed by falling masonry. Blood stained the wreckage and screams rose and fell. Duo, Xianlinner's cry, raw with grief and despair, cut through the din of battle. She was tightly bound by countless tough vines cast off by the 10,000 Demons King. Though she poured out wave after wave of spirit power, she could only watch helplessly as the fatal claw struck and pierced Qianduoduo's body. Rage and regret scorched her heart. She unleashed the last of her spirit power. Azure flames roared out like a volcanic eruption and instantly vaporized the clinging vines. Her whole form became a tragic streak of blue light as she hurtled toward Qianduoduo, reaching with a trembling arm to catch his falling body. Linner, live! Qianduoduo's broken form slumped weakly into Xianlinner's cold embrace. His face, stained with blood, was contorted in pain, but his eyes still held attachment and reluctance. He opened his mouth and a fountain of blood burst out, soaking Xianlinner's collar. The dazzling crimson seared her vision. The special spirit tool armor he had designed, meant to withstand a full-force strike from a titled Douluo, had already been shattered and deformed by the impact. His exposed skin was lacerated and torn. At his feet lay fragments of shattered level 8 defensive spirit tool parts, flickering weakly, his last, instinctive life-saving measures. But Xiangjun's Tear Sky Claw was a terror even Ditian would not underestimate. Even with renowned defenses, Qianduoduo had ultimately failed to stand against the second blow. His body convulsed violently. Thick blood and ruined organs gushed from his mouth as the wounds in his chest, pierced by the claw's light, warehoused outward, becoming bone-deep gouges that revealed shattered insides. The claw's tearing energy had erupted inside him. The final spark in his eyes went out like a candle in the wind. The hand that had clutched Xianlinner's arm loosened and fell limply. He breathed his last. Only his eyes, unable to close fully, still reflected concern for the woman before him. Duoduo! Xianlinner crushed Qianduoduo's cooling body to her chest and let out a keening wail of grief, so sharp it seemed to pierce the sky. The azure flames she could not control exploded outward, the extreme heat warping the air into shimmering currents and turning the space around her into a destructive sea of blue fire. Her eyes were bloodshot and filled with murderous intent, fixed on the massive dark gold Dreadclaw bear not far away. Her hatred was almost tangible. She looked like she would tear it apart with her bare hands. Kai Meier, Shi Xing, Yan Xiaojie, and the others watched in stunned sorrow. In a single instant, they had lost an old comrade, one who had stood beside them for decades, an anchor of the Shrek Academy Spirit Tool Department and an indispensable elder of the Sea God Pavilion. Yan Xiaojie's holy light of purity flickered uneasily. The spatial temporal silver disk slowly rotating behind Shi Xing emitted chaotic fluctuations. Grief struck them all like a tidal wave. Roar! At the moment, the wall's shield shattered and the breach opened. Hundreds of vanguard spirit beasts that had smelled blood let out frenzied, bloodthirsty howls. Their eyes gleamed with predatory cruelty as they surged forward, a ravenous pack desperate to break through and turn the defenseless city's inhabitants into prey. Dream on. Team Douluo Qixing shook off his grief, a cold, killing intent flashing in his eyes. He knew this was no time for mourning. If the beast tide broke through, Shrek City would become hell, and Qianduoduo's sacrifice would be for nothing. His hands moved in complex seals at a speed too fast for the naked eye. The silver disk spirit behind him, etched with countless space-time runes, shot into the sky and hovered above the breach. Silver space-time light erupted like a small moon disk descending, sending out strange, vast fluctuations. His 9 spirit rings shone all at once, yellow, yellow, purple, purple, and 5 night-dark rings. Those 5 10,000-year spirit rings radiated a majestic, heart-stopping power befitting a super Douluo. 8th Spirit Ability, Space-Time Turbulence. With Xixing's roar, the 8th black ring flared with light that swallowed brightness. The silver disk spun at an unprecedented speed. The silver light intensified, and the surrounding space, like a lake struck by a boulder, began to twist, buckle, and collapse. A vast silver vortex over 100 meters across formed, filled with countless flickering fragments of light, like the maw of a cosmic abyss. An invisible, enormous suction force sprang into being and fixed itself on the breach in the wall. The frenzied spirit beasts charging forward, century-old, millennia-old, even several 10,000-year beasts leading them, were caught. They shrieked and clawed at the ground, but were helpless against a force that tore at space itself. Like leaves in a gale, they were sucked into the silver vortex. Once inside, even thick-skinned 10,000-year beasts couldn't issue a final roar before being shredded, decomposed, and erased into primitive particles by the violent, chaotic space-time fragments within the vortex. In a few breaths, hundreds of beasts that had surged like a tide were swept away as if they had never existed. Xixing's earth-shattering defense had, against all odds, bought Shrek City a precious moment. The spatial temporal silver disk is a tool spirit that intertwines the twin laws of time and space, one of the rarest on the Douluo Continent. In any world, time and space are supreme. Even if the disk can only tap a small tributary of those laws, the power it displays far surpasses ordinary spirits. It was precisely this power that let Xixing, still under 50, rise to the position of Shrek City Lord and become one of the youngest elders in the Sea God Pavilion's history. In the tool spirit hierarchy of the Douluo Continent, the silver disk's status is comparable to the clear sky hammer, the 7 treasure glazed tile pagoda, the star crown, and the 7 kill sword. But conjuring a space-time turbulence of this scale placed an unimaginable strain on Xixing. His face drained of color, cold sweat beaded on his forehead, and his body trembled. Even the light from the hovering disk began to flicker and dim. The 10,000 Demons King and the Red King saw their chance. Countless venomous vines, as tough as Vajra and tipped with gaping mouths, shot out like snakes and coiled toward the exhausted Xixing. The Red King's central head spat a scorching column of hellfire, redirecting it at the silver vortex in an attempt to shatter the space-time turbulence. Xixing gritted his teeth, a trickle of blood at his lips. Desperately maintaining the turbulence on the verge of collapse, he twisted space to dodge. The situation turned perilous once more. Meanwhile, Xian Liner gently laid Qian Duoduo's already cold body in a relatively safe corner inside the city wall, her movement so soft she seemed afraid to disturb his final rest. When she straightened and turned back toward the battlefield, something in her snapped. The azure flames that had only been an aura before now melded with her skin, her hair, and her eyes as if they were part of her flesh. Her long hair billowed without wind, every strand a burning azure blaze, and her pupils were left as nothing but a cold, incandescent will to destroy. A terrifying aura, far beyond her normal limits and almost self-consuming, raged out of her. She was burning her own life force and soul origin. This was the most tragic, most resolute forbidden art among spirit masters, exchanging irrevocable death for a short-lived, limitless surge of power. Qian Duoduo's death had ignited the long-suppressed fury and grief in all the Shrek powerhouses. Yan Xiaojie's holy light of fire flared into something vast and eruptive. A golden phoenix of light flames rose behind him, crying as though wounded, each feather and strike carrying a vow to die together rather than yield. He no longer cared for spirit power expenditure and unleashed techniques that normally demanded a terrible price, pouring everything he had into attacks against the Scarlet King. When a vine from the 10,000 Demons King suddenly struck and pierced his shoulder, he only grunted before sending a concentrated Phoenix True Fire back with a backhand, instantly incinerating the vine and a chunk of the branch at its source. Xixing's spatial temporal silver disk spun so fast it seemed to tear space itself. Time stagnation, spatial folding, dimensional slicing. He hurled expensive temporal spirit abilities as if they cost nothing. He even bit off the tip of his tongue and spat hot blood onto the disk, sacrificing part of his origin to force the disk's power beyond its limits. Invisible spatial blades grew denser and sharper, like innumerable nets of death, slicing the thick vines hurled by the 10,000 Demons King into segments. Foul, dark green ichor sprayed across the field. Chimera, meanwhile, unleashed the dragon soul sealed within her evil-slaying dragon soul spear. A solid, radiant dragon of golden, evil-dispelling energy roared skyward and collided with the Hell Demon Dragon King Ji, who commanded darkness itself. The heavens shook with their roars as golden light and black mist met and corroded each other, the two titans locked in a tragic aerial struggle. Xianliner had already become a storm of avenging azure flame. She did not summon a spirit avatar. Her body and soul were the avatar. Turning into an azure meteor, she tore through the battlefield. Wherever she passed, things disintegrated, burning blue light scorching the sky. She aimed herself, single-minded and suicidal, at the Bear Monarch. Bear Monarch, she rasped, her voice like sandpaper, each word steeped in blood, tears, and a madness that made her beautiful face unrecognizable. I want your life. The azure flame dragon spear in her hands hummed, compressing the roaring winds into a blade of concentrated azure fire capable of disintegrating matter. Every thrust screamed through the air, a deliberate act of mutual annihilation. Bear Monarch first tried to repel her with his indestructible dark gold fur and crushing claws, but when a sweep of that concentrated azure light scratched his giant claw, an appendage that had torn dragon scales and left a smoking char across it, surprise flashed in his golden eyes. Xianliner's attacks had abandoned restraint entirely. Each move was an all-or-nothing bid for mutual destruction. Even though he outmatched her in raw strength, Bear Monarch froze, unsettled by her ferocious, reckless hatred. Around them, Yan Xiaozhe, Xixing, Elder Lin, and the rest had all adopted the same tragic posture, throwing themselves into a fight with no thought of survival. That kind of madness unnerved the vicious beasts, BG, the 10,000 Demons King, the Scarlet King. What they feared most was that these human titans, pushed to the brink, might choose the ultimate, desperate option, self-detonation of their soul cores. Self-detonation is the deadliest, most tragic final act of a titled Douluo. If one detonates his soul core, the condensed result of a lifetime of cultivation, the explosive release of energy can let an ordinary titled Douluo deliver destruction on the scale of a limit Douluo. If a super Douluo like Yan Xiaozhe, Xixing, or Elder Lin resolved to detonate, the blast would level everything within several kilometers, a forbidden zone of death. Shrek still had several super Douluo alive. Even one resolute detonation would inflict catastrophic losses on the vicious beasts, possibly toppling some of their greatest fighters. 2 or 3 simultaneous detonations could drag titans like BG and Bear Monarch to their graves and wipe out the tens of thousands of spirit beasts in the ranks. The vicious beasts desired to crush Shrek City, but not at the cost of exterminating their own forces and devastating the Stardew Great Forest for generations to come. So the beasts changed tactics. They stopped headlong assaults and shifted to defense, harassment, and attrition, stalling, wearing down the dwindling spirit power and collapsing stamina of Yan Xiaozhe and the others. The 10,000 Demons King unleashed endless poisonous vines to harry and raid from a distance while keeping his main body buried and hidden. The Scarlet King spat hellfire to suppress the soul guidance cannon array from afar instead of engaging Yan Xiaozhe directly. Bear Monarch dodged Xianliner's suicidal charges, searching cautiously for a moment to cripple her while keeping himself safe, because any misstep might turn his own death into collateral of their final, desperate counterattack. On the main field, the battle raged, roars of soul guidance cannonballs, collisions of spirit abilities exploding across the sky, the screams of spirit beasts, and the shouts of men braided into a single tragic chorus. Yet no one noticed a separate, chilling abnormality. In the distance, the beast god Ditian, frozen in a block of extreme ice by Ganyu's arrow, showed no sign of breaking the seal. With Ditian's unfathomable reserves, even a temporary encasement could be overcome in time, but now the massive black dragon hung motionless within the crystal as if drained of life. Even his golden eyes were dull, the whole thing unnervingly still. While everyone's attention was fixed on the desperate fighting, a faint, almost transparent azure flame slid silently through the sky above Shrek City. It was odd in every way, moving as if outside the normal dimensions, gliding cleanly over the layers of the city's sole guidance defenses, passing above the wall where killing and energy screamed, threading through panicked crowds and alleys without disturbing a single soul. Its destination was clear: Sea God Island, the heart of Shrek Academy. The flame moved with unimaginable speed and seemed unreal to those who glimpsed it. It finally halted at the shimmering surface of Sea God Lake, whose waters pulsed with profound life energy, and hovered before the ancient golden tree that towered over the island, its crown lost in the clouds. The trunk was so massive dozens would be needed to embrace it. Its canopy made a living sea of verdant leaves, each leaf emitting a soft, pure life aura. Countless ancient vines twined around its trunk like coiling dragons. The air around it was thick and tangible with life energy, and any spirit master taking a breath there would feel their own spirit power stir with renewed vigor. This is the golden tree, the planet's most precious core of life. The azure flame quivered, and a seductive, cold, covetous voice whispered in thought. It was the great annihilator, illusory moon. Through Ditian's memories, she had long known of the golden tree, and she understood even more clearly that the sacred tree was not only the foundation of Shrek Academy, but also a vital node in the Douluo star's network of life energy. Her goal had never been merely to raise Shrek City. She intended to seize the ancient golden tree, drain and corrupt its almost infinite life force, and make it her perfect, powerful new vessel. Stirring the beast tide, watching humans and spirit beasts butcher each other until rivers ran red, those had been mere diversions, clever bait to draw away Shrek's top fighters and bury the world in chaos. If it could erupt into total war, so much the better. End of chapter. Chapter 340, Ningguang's Doubts on Sea God Lake. Atop Sea God Island, Huanlong looked up at the golden tree as it soared into the clouds. She felt the tree's restrained yet immense and terrifying life force, and a thrill of excitement and determination rose within her. She did not hesitate. The cluster of green flames converged into a fine thread of light, like a drop of water meeting the ocean, and plunged silently into the golden tree's ancient, massive trunk, vanishing at once. Outside the city walls, Yan Xiaojie, Xian Liner, and the others fought desperately, bloodied and exhausted, unaware of what was happening in the forbidden land behind them. They gave their all to protect the city beneath their feet, oblivious that the core of the academy, their greatest foundation, the thing they had sworn to protect with their lives, had already been infiltrated by their most dangerous enemy. Oh? The moment her consciousness merged with the golden tree's vast inner life energy, Huanlong's immense mental presence paused, and she uttered a quiet note of surprise. As a spark of the stellar flame, an entity of pure energy, formless and intangible, born of the Suiyang tribe, her sensitivity to mental far surpassed any spirit master on the Douluo Continent. She was a master of the mental domain. The instant she entered the tree's interior, her perception detected a subtle discord. Deep in the ocean of the tree's life energy, besides the soul fragments that had willingly merged and become the tree's nourishment, two unusually powerful and condensed independent mental bodies hid there, alien to their surroundings. Interesting, truly unexpected. A hint of playful amusement flashed through Huanlong's mind, like a hunter finding unexpected prey. Fellow travelers here before me, their foresight is impressive. She had already read Ditian's memories and knew the concepts of divinities and divine sense on the Douluo Continent. To her, divine sense was mental force sublimated to the extreme by special methods, pure and far stronger than ordinary spirit masters' minds. The two mental bodies she sensed were essentially true divine sense. One was especially powerful, its mental fluctuations vast and profound like an endless ocean, radiating majesty, sanctity, and inviolability. It guarded the other like a loyal sentinel, sheltering it meticulously. The weaker divine sense, however, was vibrant and tenacious. It was slowly assimilating the golden tree's immense life energy, continuously absorbing and fusing with it, as if it intended to refine and consume this ancient divine tree and make it part of itself. That was exactly what Huanlong had intended to do. This will be far more interesting than I expected. Greed and delight filled her formless consciousness as she crept toward the two divine sense like a child discovering a new toy. An unexpected variable had appeared in her plan. Far from annoying her, It sharpened her interest and playfulness. If a divinity's main body had descended and her own strength was not fully restored, she would have to be cautious. But these were only two divine sense clones, detached from their bodies, perfect prey for the great annihilator, illusory moon. The Suyang were rare, pure energy life forms whose existence relied on devouring mental energy and emotional fluctuations. Huanlong, a preeminent Suyang and a lord of destruction, had long since reached the pinnacle of the mental domain. To spirit masters, divine sense was an unattainable ideal. To her, it was simply concentrated, pure mental force, delicious food. She began to calculate with pleasant anticipation, after devouring these two high-quality divine sense, infused with a hint of divinity, how much of her power would be restored. 20%? 30%? Then, when she returned to the golden tree overflowing with energy, how effortlessly she could corrode and assimilate it, making it her perfect body. Her intangible, hungry consciousness spread through the tree's mental ocean, quietly approaching the two lighthouses of divine sense. Inside the golden tree, this sacred land of life that should have been tranquil, a dangerous mental struggle far beyond mortal comprehension was about to begin, unseen by anyone. And atop Shrek's towering city walls, the brutal slaughter continued. Earth-shaking war cries and the roar of spirit abilities masked every subtle anomaly. No one knew that the true fatal crisis for Shrek Academy, and perhaps the whole Douluo Continent, had already bypassed all defenses and was corroding its most essential foundation. It's time to go. Let Huanlong and those two divine sense play. We don't need to stick around just to watch. The risk isn't worth the price of admission. In her doll form, Xiao Heita walked lightly to Ningguang and Ganyu's side on the Kunyu Pavilion's top terrace. Her clear, melodious voice broke the heavy silence. She tilted her head and scanned the distant battlefield on the city wall, still flashing with energy and filled with cries, then cast a precise glance toward the seemingly calm sea god lake. There, on a level imperceptible to ordinary people, two obscure yet incredibly powerful mental fluctuations had begun to probe, collide, and constrict like deep-sea behemoths. Huanlong had already begun to engage the earlier arrivals within the golden tree. Ningguang followed Xiao Heita's gaze and looked down at Shrek City's streets and alleys. All core and non-core staff of Kunyu Pavilion had assembled according to the highest alert, waiting in orderly formation in the plaza below the main building. Every face showed tension and absolute obedience. She was silent for a moment, her slender, jade-like fingers unconsciously stroking the expensive chalcedony pipe in her hand, its gilded bowl glinting faintly. Her tone held a rare and complex emotion. This majestic city, which has stood for 10,000 years, may soon be reduced to nothing but dust. She had poured more into Shrek City than most could imagine. From a humble little pavilion to a top-tier commercial guild dominating the city center and unrivaled in luxury across the continent, her investments of resources, planning, relationships, and energy had been immense. To pretend she felt no regret would be self-deception. But such operational losses were insignificant compared to the grand chess game Lu Jingming was orchestrating, like a grain of sand before a giant wave. Madame Heita, with your main body's abilities, you could stop Huanlong right now, couldn't you? Ningguang did not immediately give the final evacuation order. She turned to the tiny doll at her side, doubt flickering in her golden amber eyes. She knew Yan Xiaojie and the others on the wall were exhausted and at a disadvantage, but with their resolve and the remaining fortifications, they could hold on for at least another half hour. That would be enough time to evacuate personnel and supplies through prearranged channels. With Xiao Heita's doll clone present, even if things went badly, long-distance spatial teleportation could instantly return core personnel to Sea Abyss City. Urgency, she thought, was unnecessary. What puzzled her was Lu Jingming and Heita's attitude. Heita's main body wasn't involved in the chaotic fighting at Mingdu. With Thousand Worlds 1 vehicle's near-bug-like trans-spatial mobility, Heita could have sent her main body here to strike the great annihilator, illusory moon. Even if she could not kill her, she could force her back or badly injure her and preserve the golden tree. Yet both Heita and Lu Jingming, directing orders from afar in Mingdu, tacitly chose to stand aside and do nothing. It seemed they had implicitly agreed to Huanlong seizing the golden tree, even allowing Shrek City to move toward destruction. That was not an oversight. It felt like cold acquiescence. No wonder you have such doubts. Xiao Heita put her hands on her hips, her doll face making a helplessly cute expression. You've run Shrek City's businesses for a long time and haven't been in Sea Abyss City's highest strategic planning, so it's natural you don't understand that little guy's deepest strategy. But, little rich lady, you're clever. You should have seen a basic truth long ago. She wiggled a finger. Some things, especially events that determine the direction of civilization and the unification of the continent, can't be judged by short-term, local gains and losses. Don't be misled by immediate devastation. You must look far ahead, step off the chessboard, and see the grand design 10, 100, or more years into the future. The doubt in Ningguang's eyes cleared like morning mist driven off by the wind and was replaced by a calm, deep understanding. She breathed for a moment and then said, I understand.